liberty, and justice for all.
Let us remain standing once again and think about our servicemen and women serving this country around the globe, and for the Marine Corps veteran who was recently killed and being memorialized in New York City this week. Thank you. Welcome to the special workshop meeting, Tuesday, April 23rd, 2019, now 7 p.m. Upcoming meetings, we have the regular village board workshop meeting Tuesday, April 30th at 7 p.m. We'll have a continuation April 17th, 2019 public hearing to be held at 7:05 to consider authorizing a property tax levy in excess of the limit established by General Municipal Law Section 3C. So that's also on Tuesday. And then the next regular village board meeting will be Monday, May 6th, 7 p.m. So once again, thank you for attending. We have been making some great progress here over the last couple of weeks going through this budget process. With the help of each and every board member here, the treasurer, Mike Genito, and all the department heads, I want to say thank you to everyone for participating and really managing this budget accordingly, as we do every year. And we're going to have Mike, the treasurer, Mr. Genito, present an overview of what has taken place and the changes that the tentative changes that we have in place since last week.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Board, good evening. As you know, at the last meeting we adopted several changes to the tentative budget, which brought it down a bit. And we have a few before you this evening. And that if we adopt these changes, it'll bring it down to roughly a 7.2% tax increase, all things being equal. One of the major drivers in this is the consideration that was brought up by Trustee Girard and others about using the money that we had from the legal settlement to pay something rather than pay it in next year's budget. As you know, we don't use one-time revenues to finance operating revenues, ongoing operating revenue. But we do have an item in the budget for next year, which is the portion of retroactive pay that would be due to the police officers for 2018 and 19 that initially we were going to, and in accordance with their memorandum of agreement, pay them after June 1. The problem with that is, of course, it puts it into the June 1 budget and raises the necessary taxes to do so. We did not anticipate having a $130,000 settlement this year. We've got confirmation, legal confirmation in writing from the law firms of the settlement, and the check will be coming sometime either before May 31st or within our what's known as revenue availability period, which is 90 days, up to 90 days thereafter. So with that, we're confident in taking that money along with some unspent funds in the contingent account. What's left in that? $18,500, $18,900 in general liability insurance that we will not need for the rest of the year, and $2,600 in unemployment insurance that we will not need for the rest of the year. So with those three things and the $130,000, we can pay the approximate $170,000 police retro pay, including the FICA benefit. The retirement isn't required at this time because the retirement bill comes in next period anyway. So with those changes anyway, as I mentioned, that would be a resolution to make those changes to the budget. That's one thing. That's the main driver on it. And then we also, of course, continued our deliberations with department heads. And as a result, a couple of things. We have a finalized agreement with Orange Avenue Apartments, which is the Sheldon. And they are going to be becoming active May 1st. And at that point, they will be, as of June 1, providing us with about $10,428 in parking space permits as required under their agreement. So we're going to add that into the budget. That is an ongoing revenue that will continue forward. Likewise, the snow and ice state aid agreement, Charles Sawicki sent me the information about that, and yes, it is confirmed that we would get that every year. We don't have an amount for next year because that doesn't get calculated until a little bit later on in the calendar year, but we're going to use the amount that we have in there for this fiscal year, 2019, which it would either be the same or more. So this amount is $19,148. So a couple other things that are going to happen. The police chief came forward and offered to eliminate one part-time patrol officer position. It's approximately $21,000. Likewise, there was $14,000 in legal fees in the police department budget. That will not be needed because all of that is being paid out of the attorneys now. And as well, there was another $11,000 in consulting fees associated with technology. The original budget was $21,000, and they were cutting that back down to $10,000. So the police chief agreed to that. So the contractual will go down by that $24,000 amount. In addition to, of course, the personal services, the associated Social Security and retirement that we had calculated for next year's budget would go down as a result of not having to pay the retro next year. So that's the sum total of it.
Question for you, Mike. The last few items you mentioned that Clarke had brought forth.
Yes.
Are they're in this number that's on the document?
Yes.
Because when I look at personnel services,
Mhm.
going from $4,273,000 to $4,114,000,
Yes,
that comes to $160,000, which that was the retro pay.
that's the retro pay, that's correct.
So when you say an officer was taken out for $21,000, where is that?
That's included in that amount for the pay.
It was already in the original amount, you think? Or-
Yes, in the amount that we have.
Okay, so the 4,273 that we started with as
Yeah, that amount was agreed to prior to the, when we did last week's,
That was where we were at last week on the
Last
changes with the tentative budget.
Right.
that's
So
what
now
I
with the
remember talking
additional
about
changes.
The officer, that part-time position coming out, you're saying that was already in that number?
I believe that was in what we agreed to last week.
Okay, I don't remember that coming up in the list of.
Was that position just an open position that wasn't filled, or was that position somebody?
That's good. Steve, I have one officer that is working in another police department now. She is probably gonna be hired full-time somewhere else, so it's open. She's working very limited, so it'll be one less officer after load, that's all. So the good thing is, Steve, she's not really getting notified, so
Okay.
I
I was
appreciate
just
that.
curious.
No, I appreciate asking that, thank you.
4273, so it was there.
Okay, so in the changes, I see personnel going from 4,319 to 4,273, you're saying that's where it was?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it looks like, realizing all of those different funds that the treasurer just spoke about, that brought us down an additional 1.5%? What was the total?
Approximately 1%, 1.2%.
1.2% from the tentative agreement, the tentative budget that we agreed to last week.
Correct.
So now that we clarified some other revenue streams that are coming in that we'll be able to use, that's where we are as of today, at 7.2% on the average of
Sorry.
20, roughly around, on the average, $20 per month per homeowner.
That's correct, on the average home.
Just a quick question. So last week where we left off, weren't we at about 8.4%? Right?
We were at 8.4%, yes.
So we went from 8.4 to 7.2. That's
Correct.
1.2%. But my understanding, just the police retro alone being about $160,000, that would, there was some other items, like,
Right, but the 8.4%, we had the older assessed valuation in there, and we had to recalculate for the
Okay,
new assessed
I see.
valuation.
So it was a different valuation.
Correct.
Now I understand. Great, thank you.
Mike, there's no CHIPS fund shown?
CHIPS funds is in the capital budget, so we don't put that
Because
through
it's
the
a line
operating.
item in with snow and ice.
it's a line item, but the only time we have that is if there are some CHIPS money that Charles Sawicki says should be used for something other than the capital items. There may be a small amount from one year to the next, generally noted.
All right, Mike, I'm just going through the list that I had sent, and I think Clarke had responded, and Mike responded to a lot of these, but the first item I had on my list was that item that we ruled on a couple of months ago about approving to take our daily fund balance and have the account swept and put into a money market, and then we would earn interest revenue on that. Were we able to figure out, I don't know if you have time.
Well, we haven't had really time to do, we have to contact, it's, I think it's NILIF, anyhow, it's whatever the consortium is that does that, about what their rates were in that period of time,
Mhm.
and then calculate what that would have been if we had it, with whatever cash flow we had available.
Mhm.
So one of the things we have to balance that too with is I have to find out on our analysis statement from the bank, because we don't get charged for, I shouldn't say we don't get charged, you never have anything, such thing as free checking. You get charged for everything you do with a bank, whether you believe it or not, for checks, writing checks, making deposits, getting deposit slips, having account statements sent to you or electronically or otherwise. The bank has a fee for every one of those items. And what they will do is run an account analysis statement for you that says, during the course of the month, these are the services we provided you with, and this is the cost of those services. And so what ends up happening is the interest rate that many banks will pay is not what you would get if you invested the money and just paid the fees, because the fees are extracted out of it. So we have to weigh that, in other words, take that account analysis down to the minimum that we need. Unfortunately, being the rates that are low, interest rates were low, you didn't get a lot of value for the money you had on deposit. But you have to weigh that against the fees they would charge versus having them just debited against your account.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I have to look at too, is to say, if we took the money out of the bank, what would the bank fees then be associated with managing our account if we were to then put them into an alternative investment?
Okay, so we haven't tried this yet for a couple of months since we...
No, we signed up for it, but
Okay.
we signed up for it later on in the year when we didn't have the large cash balance. What we're looking at is June, really starting it to make investments in that. But once again, we have to do an analysis to see how much can we invest
Yeah.
without jeopardizing or starting to get charged fees. Now, if we end up making more money in interest than we get charged in fees from the bank, then it makes sense to do it, other, but then we're gonna start seeing bank charges come up on our.
Yeah,
uh,
okay.
But at the same time, in June, people are gonna be paying their tax bills, and the village is gonna collect over $10 million, plus whatever's in their fund balance already. It's a significant amount of money. I mean, even if it was 1% interest, just to throw out a number, that's quite a substantial sum on $10 million.
Well, it is, but as I said, banks charge you for everything that you do. So I'll put it this way, the former bank that we were dealing with for many years actually did start charging us. Their charges ran from $5,000 to $10,000 a month for their fees. We're not dealing with that bank anymore, but they can be expensive if they charge you just for it, and then you have to obviously go out and search other banks and what their fees and charges are. We did that quite a while back, and we ended up with two banks that we're doing business with primarily that are very good.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, the only other item I had on my list that was directed to Charles was about the, I think it was the overtime, I'm trying to look for it right here now.
Yeah, we noticed
That was
the
reduced.
water department, water department overtime,
I know the work, that was reduced from 45 to 40, but
that was wastewater.
the other, that was wastewater?
The wastewater went from 45 to 40.
Okay, I thought the water department was,
The water department.
130 or
yeah,
something?
130, it's, the budget for 130, the reason it's as high as it is, last year we made a decision to, on an annual basis, to flush our hydrants. and that's all done on overtime. It's done in the middle of the night for the most part. It's done all on overtime. In addition, the War Department has standby, as required by the county
Health
health
Department.
department.
Mhm.
They also have, call-ins, and when we have a water main break, that's all done on overtime. So it varies from year to year, depends on what occurs. So it might seem high, but there's a lot going on as well.
Yeah, it just looked high proportional to
Yeah.
the base wages in there, so that's why I was asking, but, I mean, it's fine.
For things that are planned, like the hydrant flushing that you mentioned that you prefer to do overnight, is there any opportunity for the employees that are involved in that to essentially take comp time? Like not work certain hours during that week so that they can come in?
Well, we do offer that. I mean, it's up to the
I
employee
see.
whether he wants to do it or not. I mean, we have, there's many employees that, for the last few years have done that, in the street department and other departments as well.
If they're a planned expense, it seems a little bit foolish to anticipate overtime, that's all.
It's an event that, for flushing of the hydrants in particular, is that when you flush the hydrants, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you churn up all of the sediment, I guess, or whatever they call it, and poses the, brings it out into the water, into the fountain, into the faucets, and people don't necessarily like drinking groundwater.
And by doing it that time.
Not necessarily.
By
Depends on
doing
what
it
time of
that
day.
time of the day, it's less of an impact on the
Right,
residents.
so it settles down after they flush them all out, and it settles by the time people wake up and want to shower. Anybody else have any? I just want to make the public aware that this process that we've been going through over the past couple of weeks is a process that has been taking place for many years in the village of Suffern. Bringing this budget down was due to hard work and dedication from everybody here on the board of the department, as I said. And really, to think about it, trimming that budget and running this village in a fashion that doesn't cut services, provides all of the services that we're accustomed to, senior citizens, garbage collection, policing, snow plowing, hydrant flushing, wastewater treatment. These are the things that are critical to the village. This is what we need to do. But you have a staff here that's dedicated, and, we are here for the village. And it's just a very challenging event every year. So I want to just thank everyone for participating and really giving it our all. Anybody have anything else? Okay. Yes?
Quick question. The police budget, by eliminating the part-time position, which will reduce the cost by about $21,000, where do we foresee the net increase? Because someone's going to, fill that position from an overtime standpoint or what have you, so.
That's a part-time position.
But those hours that are left, that someone's taking those hours. I assume it's a full-time
but
officer that's
usually
gonna
the-
take that spot?
I'm sorry, usually the part-timers, and the chief can, you can correct me if I'm wrong, are scheduled events. So
Okay,
they're scheduled in.
okay,
So we have other part-timers that can offset
okay,
anyone else,
all right.
any other officer. Okay, yes,
I have a question about the police contract.
yes,
Who negotiated the contract?
I did, along with some labor council, the PBA representatives.
So it's just you and the police department?
With input from others, yes.
Did you consider hiring outside counsel?
Yes.
A legal firm that specializes in labor union negotiations?
Yes,
And what conclusion?
that was costly, and the impact of that would have been the same, going to mediation. There's a whole process involved with the police contracts as versus the CSEA contracts. The negotiating is different. The cost is more, it's more costly to negotiate with the police department due to mediation and arbitration. and then going to PERB and seeking.
What could be more costly than a 15% increase in the contract? That seems to be.
Lawyers' fees.
The attorney's fees and the mandated finding.
I mean, isn't a typical increase in salaries maybe 2 to 5%? Why is it 15%?
It was in between 2 and 3%, 2 and 3%, the increase annually. So going back, the
But the
police.
contract has gone up $600,000, went from $3.9 million for the police department to $4.5 million.
That's over
That's
the
a
course of
15% increase.
That's over the course of 3 years.
Compounded.
No, that's
Each
1 year.
increase is on
That's
top of
that's
one.
2019 to 2020.
No, because it was retro. It was settled this year.
The 3-year
That's why.
So it's a 5% increase each year.
2. It was actually 2 1/4, 2 1/2, 2 1/2. When we first came into office, there was actually no fund balance. There was no money available even to negotiate a contract. Right now, and this was the whole process that we were talking about over the last couple of weeks, is that we have now built up our fund balance where we have money, where we have a contingency fund, we have a fund balance, a positive fund balance as opposed to a negative fund balance. You know, going into a negotiation with, I'm gonna say the police department, when you have no funds available, that would have been more challenging than it is now, than it was. Because you're still gonna be mandated to pay by the arbitrators.
I just don't understand, like, I look at the salaries, I look through all the salaries of all departments for the entire village, and the police department is by far the highest paid. That the average salary in the village of Suffern is $84,000. That's what the average citizen makes in Suffern. Now, for the employees of the village, the average salary is between $41,000 and up to $110,000, $100,000, $110,000 for our top employees. Police department, the top salary is $232,000. That is more than the governor of New York. And he is the highest paid governor in the state in the country.
And he's gonna get a raise.
So how is it that our top employee at the police department is paid more than the governor of New York, who is the highest paid governor in the entire country?
Well, I mean, I can't answer that directly why.
I would like
but
an explanation.
I can't give you the explanation
No,
of
I
of
can
the salary
explain it.
structure. Go ahead.
Rockland County, if we went to arbitration, John, the department went. The arbitrator is gonna cost probably $20,000. That's confirmed through attorneys that we deal with. There are patrolmen in other departments in the county that make more than every one of us here in seniority ranks. Rockland County Policing, yes, is expensive, yes, they pay, but it's every single municipality throughout the region.
I understand it's a regional problem.
Yes, I just want to let you know that, that's pretty much what it is. There are patrolmen up the street that make more than any one of us, chief, lieutenant, and several of them. Captains make $100,000 up the street around the than what we would make here in the village as a chief. So you've got to look at regionally, it's a regional issue, and that's where the salaries come from. It is an issue throughout, but that is the pay scale throughout the area. And that's just a fact, I'm not making up, it's not something that I brought in when I came in, I've been here almost 30 years. It's been, salaries have been at that level, rising up above municipal workers. It's always been above municipal workers.
I saw a post by a NYPD policeman, and he said that he was extremely frustrated looking at these numbers and these increases, because he can't afford the tax increase to pay
Sure.
your salaries.
Yep.
And so he is gonna have to list his house and move out. So there seems to be some sort of disconnect. The starting salary for an NYPD officer is $45,000. Goes up to $85,000 after 5 years. The majority of policemen are paid over $130,000, up to $200,000 and $230,000. Very few of the police officers or the full-time police officers are paid between $80,000 to $100,000. And it's just so much higher than the rest of our village.
You're comparing smaller departments with 35,000 cops in the city.
I was a New York City policeman for
They
20
could
years.
never pay anything.
For 20 years. Do you think that I had something to say about the salary of
I
Ramapo or Suffern?
I imagine you'd rather be working here in Suffern than in the
Absolutely.
Bronx, right?
Sure.
I mean, this is a very cushy kind of location.
I
I
sure
don't think there's a
would.
lot of homicides that take place.
You're right.
It's a
I
No,
mean,
but-
you hit the nail on the head, it's a
Right.
regional issue. Policemen are there, I'll go on the pulpit here. 24 hours a day, every holiday. They put on the bulletproof vest. They put the gun belt on. They miss the birthdays, they miss the holidays. They're out there all the time. You know,
I know, it's just,
You know, it's in my
one of those
heart. I
stressful
have it.
jobs, there's PTSD, it's a tremendously
right,
stressful
it
job.
is an
We all know this,
issue.
and
I hear you. You know, I definitely hear you. It's a regional issue. We're guided by the Rockland
It's
County
just,
Police Act.
it's unsustainable is what I'm saying.
Right.
It cannot be sustained.
Oh,
Like, what's the salary gonna be in 10 years? It's gonna be
Let me-
$400,000, we're gonna have $200,000 cops? It can't be continued. Someone's gotta confront this.
it was,
If you go to arbitration, they look at every police department in the county, and you'll wind up getting more than the last contract.
There's a chance we probably have, that is something that's an issue. That is discussed between the PBA attorneys and the negotiating committee with the village. That is true. You really don't know when you go in. They can compare. Ramapo does well, and they should do well. Captain Schmidt, they have no, very good department. And they would compare us to that with an enhanced retirement that they have, which they deserve. But my point is they would look at everybody. So the village, and I agree with the mayor, could take a risk, anybody could. All of us could take a risk. When you go there, you don't know when arbitration is gonna go with it.
Do you have
Or
to
it would be
arbitration?
expensive.
I mean, is
If
it
they
an
don't agree to it-
automatic thing that?
No, you would go to mediation as far as you could, and if they can't agree, then they would have to go to arbitration. We have never been to arbitration. Very few departments in the county go, based on the fact that I think there's a lot of unknowns that could happen, that could go after the municipality as well. You just gotta be careful. That's not something I'm involved in. I just know from the seat. I research this obviously as part of my job. To obviously work with the village and advise them what I can also.
You have to take a raise?
Do we have to take risks? I am not in the PBA. That's an issue, that's PBA president.
Because I
But yes,
know,
but I mean, the bottom line is, if there's no raise, could they go to arbitration all the way? We are the only unit, the PBA and the police, that go to arbitration. CSEA could not, or other workers. That's just, the reason arbitration started was to keep politics out of policing, so you wouldn't have to go in and focus. Back in the day of policing, many, many years ago, it was extremely political. It is now, we're all civil service based on tests. So how they took out the politics, a lot of it is they made arbitration, if you have to go there, an independent person looks at it all and decides what we should get. That's pretty much what it is. But the bottom line, that would be for a PBA president to answer that question.
because I know, like, my situation in my business, we're pricing ourselves out of business. So we're not gonna take a raise in the next 3 years.
Okay. I understand, and
Just to keep
I'm not gonna answer
to
what,
keep us working, you know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
yeah.
I'm not saying, you know, because last thing we want is Ramapo, I'll tell you that right now. But again, like everybody's saying, we can't afford it.
I understand. I'm not arguing with that.
And if you
I'm
go
on
to
you
Ramapo,
forever.
Yeah, no,
I've been on you forever. so-
Like I said, last thing we want is Ramapo.
if you go to
But, you know, it's
Ramapo, the
going-
same service is gonna cost you 10 or 15%.
He's saying
I'm not
they don't
saying
want
that.
you to
No,
go
I'm
to
saying-
Ramapo.
I'm
I'm saying
saying
we
if
don't
that
wanna
was
lose
the
the police,
case,
but
you know, we're
they're
beating the
killing
police
us.
department up.
I don't think
No,
anybody
I don't
wants
think
to.
they're
I don't
doing
think
All right,
anybody-
hold on, let's, before it gets.
Nobody wants to
We
consolidate
can
with
talk one at a
Ramapo.
time. Mr. Turco?
I was gonna say, I don't think anybody here in the village wants to consolidate and lose what we have.
Correct.
From what I understand.
And that, my
being a-
explanation just now with the budget, and how we worked through this budget, all of us collectively, is that we maintained all our services. There was so much outrage in regards to the tentative budget. You know, that's going through the worksheets, through the department heads, and then, you know, the worksheets being returned to us and us analyzing them. And then going to the department heads, really seeing, indicating what you really need, where can we cut it, where's the fat, where's the waste? And that's what we did, and this is the way we came about it.
So maybe in the.
And we
future-
kept we kept everything
Every service.
intact. There'll be some changes to some services, you know, maybe a reduction in hours, maybe an increase in a swimming fee or something like that, but to get this budget to where we are and to keep all our services, I think is outstanding.
Do you
And
think
I
that
hope-
maybe
I
in the
hope we do.
future, instead of having a tentative budget that's so high, getting it down to 7 now where we are, that the work can get done prior to that, so that people don't get such a like a high alert of like, I gotta just leave?
No, you're
Like that- and
you're
that
right,
is-
but
that-
some
that was
of
going
the
through.
revenues that come in and the cost, we don't have those costs that early in the year. Just some of our decreases came in just recently in the last 2 weeks, last 3 weeks. That's how we incorporate those changes into the budget. The reduction in healthcare costs or workers' compensation insurance, So all of those things play a role into our budget.
Yeah, John, I mean, we don't want to get the residents riled up over something that is fictitious or hasn't been worked out. We should be trying to work on this stuff sooner. The reality is, if everybody didn't get involved and actually show up and make some noise, we wouldn't have had we wouldn't have had as many meetings as we've had. Okay, it wouldn't have pushed everybody to really sharpen their pencils and comb through every item. So
It should get to that point, right?
I
mean, as
agree.
residents, we should know
I
that
agree.
We should be able to do the best we can and keep our services and everybody working to make sure we have, the least amount of tax increases we can. So we
Absolutely.
can all stay here and keep the great services we do have. I mean,
And
Clarke does, how much he does for this village and this police department and everybody else does, the DPW guys that are out there in the snow. Everybody in this village appreciates all of that. We really, really do.
But
It's
we
a point
need-
where people are like, I can't, I'm at my breaking point at 14%. Then they start calculating that and they're like, you know what? I'm just gonna go instead. So that process, even though it's been a month, there's been some of my clients that I've actually dealt with that have put their houses on the market thinking it was 14 and just threw their hands in the air. I'm saying maybe in the future we can go to the drawing board first and really dig it down and really, so this way it doesn't get to that where everybody has to keep coming to the meetings.
we want to be as transparent as possible. Those costs that were identified in the tentative budget were things that we had to look at. We had to look at maintenance of vehicles, parts. We do this every year. I mean, I disagree somewhat with you, Mr. Girard, but every year we go through the same process. It may not be every meeting, but the same process is intact. This is what we do. Starting earlier, we started earlier last year, I believe. Yeah, but it's still the same process. We still have to wait for things to come in and sharpen the pencil with the department heads, absolutely.
I think the residents.
And we don't
know
need
it's
to
not-
rile up like what happened this year. Everybody was riled up. When the
14%
process wasn't
tax
even
increase will get you riled
completed.
up. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think that maybe people don't understand the whole process.
Yeah, you're
We're
right.
not on your side of the
Right.
table, we don't understand.
Right.
We see 14%, and how can you not get robbed?
right.
I mean,
Understood.
we don't understand how the whole entire situation works. Maybe an educational thing, maybe moving forward for the whole board, to actually educate the public about how all this works. Moving forward, having workshops, not when you have a budget, but to understand the government process.
Right,
For the
right.
village residents to understand when this part comes up, we'll all be more aware of how this whole process works, that we see a tentative budget. Not everybody knows that is something that can
Right,
get choked down, but maybe an educational workshop throughout the year, so, hold quarterly or something like that, where the village can come and understand the entire process, so when this comes up again, everybody kind of understands where we're walking through, and then we're not gonna get so riled up.
We'll take those suggestions, they're great suggestions, thank you.
Anything else?
Okay.
So there's no chance that there's $100,000 there for a party at Curly's Corner? Is that it's a joke. It's a joke, I apologize.
Actually, I have another question.
See,
Questions, Commander?
I was on Mr. Alpert's speech, I'm
Of course,
sorry.
Steve, whatever.
We talked a little bit about this briefly, but I'd like to actually meet with you further and discuss it in more greater detail. But one point, I was looking for the document that had it, unfortunately, so many documents, I'm getting a little mixed up myself. The proposed overtime, so you've come down from 325 to 300, which I think is, good. It's a good start, we'll call it. It was budgeted at.
Steve, could I interrupt?
Yeah.
What page and line are you
Oh, I'm
referencing
sorry,
here?
page
so that we
18,
can-
page 18.
Which budget?
Well, it's this is the budget preparation document. So, we've talked about this briefly. I believe you said, and tell me if I'm wrong, I'm
Page,
short memory here,
Maggie
that
said 18.
you base your tours, as far as who's on duty and how many and all this other stuff, based on a minimum of 2, which makes sense.
Minimum,
You
correct.
always want
You have to
backup,
have, yeah.
and I agree with that. You
Yeah.
want backup because someone needs backup and it makes perfect sense.
Thank you, okay, thank you.
But having said that, there might be times when you have, I don't know how many is the maximum you have on duty, but there might be more, and those people maybe could be slid a little so that you don't incur an overtime situation at some other point. in the week. I don't know where the points are that are generating, say, $300,000 in overtime.
Sure.
To me, I look at a number like 300, and I'm not meaning any disrespect.
No, Steve, I'll
But I
explain,
see
I
that,
understand.
I see that as mismanagement of employment throughout the week. I think that there could be a better spread that would cover those spots that you need the overtime for, when someone's out sick, when someone's on vacation, whatever the case may be. I believe there's ways to reduce that.
All right, I think I should just explain that. I think to give, the first one is to give clarification on the manpower situation. Some of you, I think, probably heard the speech on Order Alpert last meeting. We had 29 full-time officers when I took over as chief, shortly before that, in 2004, 2005. We are currently down to 22 full-time officers. So that's 7 officers down. Those are 7 spots that took, we really had minimal, if hardly any overtime when I started. That took place for a while. But as through attrition, we lost positions, those spots to be filled had to be filled with overtime. Is it cheaper to pay overtime than hire officers? Absolutely, 100%. I actually teach, I'm a college professor as well, I'm a criminal justice professor, and one of the things I teach is community policing, and one of the levels is about manpower. And just to give you a quick, I actually looked at some, I had a feeling it was going to come up tonight, not in a bad way, but even William Bratton, who was the ex-police commissioner in New York City, basically is an article, which I can copies for you if you need it. Bill Bratton argues extra NYPD overtime makes up for lower headcount. So this is an expert in the field, probably the renowned expert, of the fact that he had less officers, he paid overtime, so he's not paying 2 sets of salaries, 2 sets of pension costs, and 2 sets of health benefits. So the costs were astronomically lower. My overtime budget was probably 8 to 9%, I looked it up today.
Yes, it is around 8 to 9%.
Which is low.
Correct.
Which is very low for a police department 24/7. Even with the minimum staffing that I have right now, down to 22 officers. Stony Point is very comparable to us. I think they have 1 less officer per line of pool than we do. And the overtime budget is 400,000, and there's a chance they could go over that. Village of Piermont, spoke to the chief today again to reiterate, $150,000 overtime budget, he's up to 160 already. He's a village, so he goes from June to June like we do, with 7 officers. So we are well within our range, we are actually low for the rest of the county, and that's just one. I could go to each department, and we are extremely low for it. So all I'm saying, Steve, is to shift officers, we have a contract, has officers on a squad, certain amount of officers. I have Lou Venturini as my canine officer, my community policing officer, who I can shift in. But it's sort of like playing chess and missing 3 pieces. I'm trying to plug here before somebody takes off over here. Officers have contractual sick time, time off personal days, vacation time. I have officers injured, unfortunately. It is a dangerous job. Even in Suffern, I told you last time, I had 2 officers very seriously injured last year. One is still out on light duty right now, which is another issue with popping up on light duty. So point being, Steve, there is only so much that we can predict as much as we plan for the squads. Things are unpredictable, such as weather incidents, such as major crimes, such as major accidents, such as unnatural deaths. So my point is, all I'm saying is the overtime, that's where the idea of overtime is going, to manpower for those types of circumstances when someone calls in sick.
Let me, pardon the interruption.
Sure.
So, doing the math,
Yes,
I figured out, let me just go with me here.
Sure.
If you divide the number of hours in a week,
yeah,
okay, by 40, you come up, I believe the number was 4.2, if I'm not mistaken. In other words, 4.2 times 40 is the number of hours in a week. So it would take 4.2 employees, 1 deep, to cover an entire week, 24/7. Okay, let's make that 5.
Okay.
Let's just say that's
Sure.
5 employees. So 10 employees, we're talking full-time employees,
yes,
brings you to 2 employees, 24/7, okay? 20 employees, which you're more than that, but we'll say 20, that's 4 employees, 24/7. Now, the question is, that means that if there's only 2 on certain shifts, maybe on the overnights, you imply that there might be as few as 2 on certain shifts.
there are some,
That means there might be 6 or 8 on some of the other shifts, and I'm wondering if that's necessary.
I think, Steve, you gotta realize, my patrol force is 16 without the part-timers, because myself, lieutenants, as well as the detectives, are not road patrol officers. So you break that down to 16 officers without the part-timers right now, so that's the number we deal with. That's not counting vacations, sick times, injuries, or anything else that comes up. Or even, there's a list of things that officers get off work, particularly if they get injured. So, we really screwed that. I was with the lieutenant, I was off today, and the lieutenant was on the phone for 45 minutes with you. putting in part-timers to fill dispatch or wherever we could. We were talking about shifting this one, switch this one, and we do that consistently on a daily basis. I think that's why we are where we are. Well, we're not the 400 or 450,000 because of plugging in the part-timers. That basically saves us from paying astronomical costs. And I know looking at the raw number, looks like a lot. I just, if I look, $300,000, it's a lot of money. When you realize it's 24/7, 365, on top of not just patrol, court, we go to court, we have injuries, we have to go to the ME's office on death, and we get them, death investigation, we get every possible thing that happens, we have to pull off the regular shift by contract to have them go to these things and have to get overtime.
Do you, when is someone you have to pull off for court or something like that? If it's a day shift or something like that, where it seems you might have a greater depth on duty, do you absolutely need to backfill that slot?
No, if we have enough officers, absolutely not. Stephen, that's what I said, a lot of times, if somebody calls in sick, there's no overtime. A couple of people call in sick, and one takes off, then I get overtime. Yeah, that's, the squads, when I used to have even minimal 3 more officers, one in each squad, and I'm not saying we're looking for it, but I'm saying that would make the number of overtime go drastically down, because then it wouldn't matter if a couple of people called in sick and took off without it. Now it does though. Every time we run into an incident, due to the fact of the amount of officers we have, we feel it all.
Just to, you know, speaking of the overtime and the issues that I know Chief and I have met numerous times in regards to speaking about the overtime and speaking about staffing, so it is being talked about and scrutinized at the same time, you know.
Appreciate that.
It is, and I will assure you, to the mayor and I spoke, I'm talking to the PBA, they're all on the same page. I live here, I've been a lifelong resident, a lot of officers live here. We just are trying to do what we can do to help as well. We understand the situation. We understand it. So whatever we can do to try to help out, we're going to do it.
I have a question about the staffing and tiering.
Sure.
So there's quite a bit of, so you have 2 lieutenants that support you, right?
Yes, correct.
And then you have 5 sergeants?
We have, right now, we have, six, I'm sorry, six.
One detective sergeant.
Correct.
So are they on the patrol or what?
Oh, yeah, sergeants count as members. So the one thing I gotta tell about my sergeants, my supervisors, they take calls like I do. I'll be honest, I was in a burglar alarm yesterday. I was taking we had a death investigation up in Bon Air. I was in the scene, helping to see what was going on. It was a natural death, but my point was we were there. And I'm there taking a call, and they're backed up, I'm taking an action. We all do it. Everybody jumps and takes calls. That doesn't happen to bigger departments, they're much bigger and they're more specified. Here we do it. Our patrol officers are like anybody else.
So all the officers do patrol?
Yes, as well as sergeants, yes.
So what is police officer 1? So there are different tiers, 1, 2, and 3, correct?
Yes, there's different, under the Rockland County Police Act, you go to the bottom, we are bound by the Rockland County Police Act. Only two counties in New York State, us and Westchester, have a police act that basically overrides civil service law. So they give you 5 years from the time you start to the time you reach top grade pay.
5 years?
5 years. That is due to the Rockland County Police Act. Way beyond, that was settled in 1936, and it's never been changed. That's beyond us.
What is the top tier payment started?
The top tier, we'll go fifth is the lowest.
When you get to, so in 5 years you go from tier 3 to tier 1?
You go from tier 5 to tier 1.
Okay.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And that's the top, so if you see that on the sheet,
Yeah.
that just means how many years your officers have on. If you see a 3 or 4, it means they got a couple of years in.
So at 4, they'll be at 1 in 4 more years.
John, there would be, yes. John, would be, 4 would be, yeah, 5 years.
So I noticed that a lot of our officers are tier 1, which is.
Senior, yeah, that seems like 5 years.
How many years have they been serving on the force? And how, is there a 20-year retirement? How does it work in terms of?
You could retire 20 years, but you actually don't have to retire under the pension system until age 70. Nobody's gonna stay there 70 but so far, but you can, but I haven't seen it yet.
One might.
I think one's going to. I don't even say, every day, I don't even
Are you
mention it.
turning 70 next year?
I got 2 years, 2 more years.
It's got 4 more years.
No, but I agree with you,
A couple that almost wanted to stay.
Yeah.
It just seems like the tier 1s are getting paid the salary of 1.5 police officers from the first 5
You're
years.
absolutely right.
So is there like a retirement incentive that we can give to some of them so you can get more officers on your patrol?
I'd love the question, that's beyond me. I don't handle the body, but that's something for.
Or just understanding the tier structure and how it's working.
Sure.
Like there was the same problem with teachers, for example, at some point. My
Yes,
father was
that's right.
offered, they were getting very high salaries, so they were offered incentives to retire early. and they got new younger teachers in, and it was part of a process.
Sure.
And that was very beneficial to the town, to the county.
For 5 years.
Yeah,
Okay. Thank you. Thank
please,
you.
you're welcome. I'm staying around after the meeting.
Last
That's,
question I have for the board, I put out a proposal about the community foundation. Do you have any thoughts on?
I think the community foundation and I think they need to provide us a service to the village in order for us to give them the $3,000. They need to provide a service to the village. They're their own independent 501c3, nonprofit organization. So I think that's something, you know, we can discuss it, but I believe there has to be a service that's involved, that they're providing to the village of Suffern, and then we can offset that expense.
And wasn't the purpose of that so that they could get the grants that the village cannot get?
Right.
Right.
That was the whole idea of setting that up.
So I think getting grants and actually fundraising activities for the benefit of the community foundation would be something that we should explore, yes. Rather than gifting of taxpayer dollars.
They should be getting
To-
these grants that the
Correct.
village is unable to apply for.
Right. That was me, you asked the board.
Anything to add there, Fred? I know you've been on this a long time.
Well, the
Frank,
foundation
Frank, you've been on it a long time too.
in 1996, and there's always two members of the board of trustees that are on the board itself. And through 2014, it has always been funded by a couple $1,000s by the village. $3,000, and then in 2014, I think it went down to $2,000. We've been so successful in the startup mobilization the first few years of the program in getting grant funds and implementing programs that they have shed themselves from us over into the county. For example, doctors' visits for senior citizens, which was a voucher program, taxi cabs. It was so successful in the village of Suffern, they said, hey, let's bring this over to the general populace of the county. We've given computers to needy children. We've, you know, we offer a program to the graduating seniors of the elementary schools and the middle school and the high school for a community citizen award for someone who does outstanding service within the community. So, you know, it's ongoing.
But are there any grants coming through that community? I mean, I know you do.
Well,
your
for example, like
grants.
we also contribute to the DARE program. We make a small contribution yearly to the DARE program and to the Suffern Soup Kitchen.
Where is that money coming from?
Okay, but simultaneously, I'm getting grants which are approaching probably close to $10,000 annually
For the DARE
for Clarke, for DARE. Okay, so it's not coming necessarily through the foundation, but it's coming through that. We've also supplied the Clifford Theater with microphones. They needed a PA system, so we did that. Simultaneously, I also get grant funds for the Clifford Theater this past year, probably close to like $5,000, $5,000 for the production of the play. So what's happened was some of these programs which were initially within the foundation have now sort of...
They've morphed over.
Exactly, they moved over into a new arena.
But do they look, I know you're involved, you've been involved.
Yeah.
Are they actively looking for any grants that are not available to you as the village? That's my question. Or are they just using whatever money they do get and passing it to DARE or whoever? They gotta bring some money in, that was the whole purpose.
You're talking about the community foundation needs to bring the money in.
Yes.
Correct, so that's what we need to strive to do. I don't think the village should be gifting taxpayer dollars
Right.
to a nonprofit organization, although it does fabulous work for the
Yes.
village. Absolutely. But we cannot gift taxpayer dollars. When I came in office, I stopped that. I was advised by legal counsel not to gift.
No, that was supposed to be their function.
Right, so now they should fundraise and seek grants.
So how does that differ from what we provide for DARE?
DARE provides a service to the village and the program for drug abuse and
I
activity.
think
I know
the
what DARE
DARE
does, I'm saying that we
The
have
DARE
money
program,
to support the DARE program, I'm
the
trying to
DARE
understand.
program raises, and I'll let the chief address it, but they go out fundraising for DARE, for the DARE program. So that's why in the budget, you'll see 40,000 in and 40,000 out.
They
Just
raise money.
Yeah, we take no taxpayer, I've raised over the years from hockey, I do a lot of grants, I haven't done like everything that we've done.
Yeah.
And we've raised a lot of money just for DARE. Plus, I don't take, even my hockey league, I don't take any money from the village whatsoever, never have. Maybe way back 25 years ago when I started it, but we don't. And Jim knows this, Jim, we've
Yeah,
been
I
quoted by
mean,
whatever.
it's an offset, that's all it is.
Yeah, if you
He
see
raised
$50, I
money,
raise
so
it.
it's gotta go on the balance sheet two ways.
I just raise it to different events I have.
Paul,
for the kids.
sorry for interrupting.
No, not at all.
I'm
The
just trying to understand.
foundation used to do fundraising, used to have dances.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they stopped. And I don't know why. Anyway, do they do any type of, the community foundation?
Yeah, they used to have the
Do
Suffern
they do
Day.
anything to fundraise, just besides asking the village?
I don't know, I've been on this a few months, you've been on it
No,
for
I-
years.
yeah,
I mean, why don't you
I
answer your own
haven't seen
question?
anything. I haven't seen anything.
All right, so I think this
I don't
discussion,
wanna pick on the
I think we have the
foundation.
answer to the donation or the gifting of taxpayer
Fundraising.
dollars. I think the discussion with the community foundation should be fundraising and seeking grants.
Can I make a suggestion? That perhaps you could, can you qualify what the funds can be used for? Like, for example.
If we give the $3,000, they have to provide a service to the village of Suffern.
Right, so what I would suggest to do, because you're looking to increase that amount for a specific purpose, is that you can perhaps require that the money be used to hire a grant writer.
We have a grant
They
writer.
have it already.
And we'll be able to utilize the grant
So
writer
is it-
to seek these
Does
grants.
the grant writer work in conjunction with the community foundation?
Just for, did you say?
In
No,
conjunction?
In conjunction, yes. Well, or will be.
So so,
You have to understand,
Then-
when you apply for a grant, there just isn't a pile of money out there, and you say, okay, I'm the community foundation, come give me $5,000. You have to be very specific about what you want that money for, and it's a competition. I'm competing against everyone else within New York State, sometimes Rockland County, sometimes the entire United States has these funds. So you really gotta have a very viable idea of what you wanna do, and something that's really going to, if it's shovel ready to go in the ground and you can get it off the ground, I mean, that's a big plus.
And they
But-
gotta be out there.
And they gotta be out there, right. So, right now, I don't have a specific program that I'm out there seeking, for something for, but,
But they should come up with try to give you a criteria of what they want to do, and then you can look and see if there's anything out there.
There's also grants that are made available to the nonprofit organizations themselves. Like, I'll use the chamber, for instance. They seek their own grants and they get funding to advertise for the Chamber of Commerce, and they receive grants. So it's just, it's a matter of fundraising and grant applications.
Who's our grant writer?
Right now.
Ernie?
Who is?
Oh,
He's our grant.
Know that?
Yeah.
What's his?
Is the village still active with the community block grants? Do they apply in those also?
Does he have a
Yes.
position, is he employed by the village?
I believe so, yeah. I don't know.
Okay,
I have 3 questions on
go ahead.
completely 3 different topics.
There you go.
Just things that have been questions. First question, I noticed, and this is for Cathy, I suppose, there's $42,000 budgeted as incoming for pool fees, okay, I guess, right? Right. So how many families, or roughly how many people does that translate to that are member, that will get the pool pass?
I sent the numbers over to Moira, I don't have it here.
Roughly.
We have approximately 800 people that sign up for the pool,
Okay.
and of that number, everything's an individual fee.
Yeah.
We have children's fees, which are $60,
Right.
an adult fee is $75, and senior citizens are free. So of that 891, I would say about 200 are seniors, and the rest are family and adults.
Okay, so, all right, just trying to get an idea of that. Now, would you say, and again, I probably could find that same information if I compared the right pages, that the 42,000 that you're bringing in with these fees
Yeah.
roughly at least offsets the cost of the lifeguards and the maintenance on the pool and the cost of utilities, whatever the cost that operate the pool for the season.
Does not offset it. Does not offset
Yeah,
it.
the chemicals alone are a fortune.
So are you asking, are we offsetting it or are you?
Are we close, where are we in that?
The number from what we were talking about the other day, it's about 15,000 that we are not up to making it. But as Jim explained, through the years, the pool, from what I understand, has never made money. It's never made a profit.
It's never made a profit.
Um,
If you break even, you're happy.
If there's only, let me ask you this, and it's something, I'm not looking to raise anybody's taxes, so to speak. As everyone here probably knows, I've been a proponent of lowering everything. But I do have a question. If only 800 or even maybe less are paying for the pools, okay? If that cost to actually operate it were divided among all the residents, it would be a very small fee per person, because 800 is only like a less than 10% of the homeowners in the village, I would think. Probably less than 5% or less than 7%.
And then included in that is swim instruction?
Well, that's a separate thing. I mean, that's a service.
But you're proposing to charge every resident for the pool, whether
Well,
they use it or
no,
not?
no, what I'm suggesting, I'm not suggesting to do that now, I'm not suggesting that this year, here and now. I'm saying in theory, instead of, in other words, it's something, you know, the village is supporting this pool in the first place. It sounds like that's where I was going with this. The village is not recouping the money anyway from this. So I'm wondering, you know, hypothetically, if it was divided up among essentially everyone, the cost to operate it would only be something like $10 or $15 or something like that per homeowner, or, you know, something like, maybe a little more, but something like that. It seems,
I'm going in the wrong direction.
But then realize that that's happening already.
Table
I don't know.
it's gonna
go Can I say something?
All right, hold on, guys. Mr. Curley?
But that's happening already, because the extra money that the pool doesn't pay for, they're already split. So you gotta let them, so it's fair, you know, you wanna kill,
Not a
you
bad
know,
point.
so people pay a fee. It's already happening, but it's a great idea.
It's just something, like I said, it wasn't that something I was for.
All right, I feel Matt.
I'm just trying to understand. Next question I have, recycling. So the number coming in, it says is $3,000, okay? So that's 3,000 for all the paper and all the metal and cans and commingled and everything together. It's $3,000 from all the residents? Is that a fair
That would
number?
not be in my
That's
question.
China's not taking recycling.
No. Specifically, for example, Bon Air and Stonegate area, we have a contractor that is, a separate carrier that is contracted for the trash that handles the recycling. So he pays for the tipping fees for the trash. All the recycled materials are brought, they brought in a separate truck, obviously, and the village gets credit for that. As well as when our refuse personnel picks up the recyclables, bring them down to Hillburn, and they get credit for the recyclables. Now, the dollar amount, I couldn't speak of exactly how that plays out, but I assume that's correct.
All right.
The problem is nobody wants them, Steve. They can't get rid of the recycles.
I wonder if there's any way to
China used to take all this stuff, and now they don't want it anymore.
see if there's any other buyer that's willing to pay more.
Well, there's by law, it has to be done, everything has to be dealt
In the
through Rockland County. So, there's no other options.
St. Lawrence
Bruce
rules?
was involved
Just
with
one-
the recycling committee for a long time.
One thing, Steve, so you know, in the just finished quarter, Suffern was the best recycling village in the county.
Right.
Took in a little over $6,000.
Okay.
So somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 every year comes back to the village because of recycling.
Okay, so why does it say 3,000 in the budget?
I didn't write that budget, I'm just giving you a number.
The number is 25,000, that's.
What page you on
that-
there?
That's 84 of 56 of the budget preparation, newest edition. This is page 4 of 56.
I don't think I'd raise it because nobody's taking it.
Well, I'm just trying to understand what the real number is, that's all. Because it sounds like it's much higher than 3,000, which sounds correct. Your number sounds more like what I'd expect.
Well, I just looked at the spreadsheet, so it doesn't sound correct, it is correct.
But I'm saying, if I saw that number that you just quoted, it wouldn't strike me as odd. When I see 3,000, it strikes me as odd.
Yeah, it should be somewhere else.
It's gotta be the street. If it's a higher number, I mean, it's in the street department, because there's no.
But I'm saying it shows 3,000 here, see how it
Yeah,
recycles.
previous years, it sort of shows it also, so. If it's somewhere else.
Because recycles are always about 20,000.
Yes.
So that's a source of revenue.
The whole year.
That's sad, yeah, it's sad.
I mean,
So my point is, it sounds like it's a significant source of revenue that might have been inadvertently left off the revenue side of this budget, that's all. I mean, it might even be as much as 1% of the budget from what you just said. I don't know. I'm not privy to.
There's only one
It's
person who
certainly
knows
not
the
1% of the budget.
What's that? Well, I mean,
Certainly
you're saying
not
it's
1%.
$25,000 a quarter.
No. 25 a year,
Oh, a year.
Steve. 6 a quarter.
He said in a year, and I have seen in past years where they've reached 20,000, and other years they've only reached 2,500.
Okay.
It all depends on the market of the recycling. There was in fact a year when there was a problem with one of the carters. So there are different issues that happen, but certainly the market drives it.
I see.
And, you know, how that happens. Now, we might have had a really good quarter of $6,000.
You're welcome.
I don't know if that is, if that's sustainable or has been the history. And certainly when, you know, we print this budget document, what's in that line is showing what has come in the past 3 years, as a matter of fact, so.
The last question actually might involve you, Mayor. I was curious, obviously, I don't have the page in front of me, but I know the legal costs beyond the village attorney that's been replaced with the council. Besides that, you know, in general, the legal costs are fairly high. Now, I imagine some of that is from some of the litigation. For instance, we just got this $130,000 that was discussed, and this, whatever. But are we in a situation where we're spending, let's say hypothetically, more than $130,000 to get $130,000? Where's the break point on that? In other words, how-
Well, we currently don't have any litigation, active litigation right now. The previous litigation did add up to a sum of money from the settlement agreement that we just settled.
But was it more than the settlement agreement, I guess is what I'm saying?
The cost of, no.
Okay, all right.
I would say no. I would have to double check on it.
Okay.
Definitely not.
I'm just making sure that we're not throwing good money after bad, that's all.
Well, if we didn't get if we didn't get
No, I
the
like the
settlement,
budget.
then we'd be,
It'd be worse.
Worse.
I understand, but I'm just saying, if we spent $200,000 to get $130,000, that's also worse. That's
correct.
all I'm saying.
Okay.
I just want to make that clear.
So we don't have any litigation going on currently with the CSEA contract?
It's not litigation, that's negotiation.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So-
So there's
so
no,
there would be
so
some-
there's legal, so, okay, so there's legal fees associated.
There's gonna be legal fees associated. Currently, there are legal fees associated with CSEA negotiations, yes. Labor contract negotiations. And the dispatchers. Did you have a question, sir?
A quick question. This street lighting, $245,000 for street lighting? Is that electric bill? or-
That's the electric bill inclusive of the whole village.
Okay.
Yeah.
How's that? That seems a little high.
LED lights.
Solar.
Eventually.
Solar. And,
LED lighting, we have a study in place now.
no, it was a question. I didn't even know.
Okay, no, but just so everybody else knows that, we are still studying the possibility of going to LED lighting, which may reduce our cost.
Who do I talk to about, my street light's been out like 4 months.
Can I answer that question? I saw it, I came by the other day, I couldn't see the number due to the bushes and trees in front of it. If you get me a number on
Don't
that.
give me a ticket for the bushes.
No, it also is. I tried to get it, if you could give me that number, I get into the portal, I can report for it.
There's a
But I
poll
couldn't get
number
in
on the
there.
poll, get that to the chief, and he enters it in the portal,
It
that
was
goes
actually
directly
in
to
the
Omenauer.
bush, I couldn't get in the bushes and that's all.
Chief, for the record, the one I told you about a month ago still hasn't been fixed.
It was put in that day, Steve, it takes a little time sometimes. I'll follow.
They do
Put 'em
take
all
a
in.
while.
No, just curious.
You know, you can save money on the street lighting. Clark, could you shoot a couple of those lights out and save some money on them?
They'll still charge you.
I'm trying, Jim, I'm sorry.
I'd take them all out, solar.
Montebello doesn't allow streetlights.
We're not Montebello.
Montebello's in a lot of things that we have in this village.
Right.
So
We're
it's
not
two.
Frank Hagen.
Okay, any further questions?
So is 2% never going to be a possibility for Suffern to stay under this cap? Like, what is your plan moving forward? Are we gonna be able to hit the 2% cap next year for 5 years?
Well, I'll tell you,
Will there
I
ever be
believe-
will there ever be a tax cut?
the last 3 years, I think the last 3 or the last 2, we were under the 2% tax cap. Previous,
3 years.
the last 3, Mike, do you recall 2 or 3? It's either 2 or 3. I know that since I've been in
Can we make it
office,
4?
we've been under the tax cap. I foresee there's gonna be growth here in the village of Suffern. I mean, I just think that, you know, with Nevada's coming back online, with developers coming into the village, with the Sheldon coming online, the Washington Muse, there are projects in the pipeline that are, I believe, are gonna offset our tax base in the next couple of years, which, to answer your question, I believe we can do it. Absolutely.
So the buck stops at your table, as Mr. Bush would say.
I'm not saying that.
Well, you say that, I mean, we're here, we're listening,
Right.
we're seeing
No,
the future, you're laying out the
future,
groundwork.
to me, from what I know, the village of Suffern is on the right track.
Well, your past has not indicated that. So, I mean, I'm just quite
The
frankly,
past is-
you're telling the people here what we want to hear, but
But
is it in
which
concrete,
past are
is
you
it set in
talking about?
stone?
I'm sorry, the
Can we
past,
make the ends meet,
That's all.
basically?
the last couple of budgets,
If
we were under the
if that
tax
revenue
cap.
doesn't
That's
come
great.
to fruition,
Right.
can we make
Yeah, but we
2%
did,
work?
we
Is the question.
we pushed off a police contract.
Okay, yeah, I know.
We
Now
have
we're
no
paying
money.
That's
price.
the meat and potato.
The meat and potatoes is
Question
that
is,
the.
can we
Now we're
take the
hitting
2%?
That's what my question, I
And
just
be up to date on our contract?
It's, did you
That's
guys,
fantastic.
when all these contracts were going on, and we were pushing, I wouldn't say kicking them down the road, we were pushing them on, we didn't go through them. Was there enough money to settle them?
No, that's what I said earlier.
So there
Before,
wasn't
3
money
years
to settle
ago,
the
we
contracts?
were fighting our way out of a deficit. Why would we enter into a negotiation when we didn't have any money?
So you couldn't give them the contracts anyway?
Plus, they went through 3 different leaderships. So 3 different PBA presidents were in place over the last 3 years. We didn't have the funds available. Pushing it off down the road, did it hurt us? To some degree, it did. At the same time, we settled the contract. They even took a lower pay raise than what other unions have received in the same year. They worked closely with us, the PBA.
But are we gonna be okay moving forward now that we're out of that position with the other 2 contracts that are coming
Along
forward?
with what I just said, with, you know, the redevelopment and businesses and economic development coming into the village of Suffern, I see a great
Yeah,
side of
but
Suffern.
not rely on that, because you don't know if that's gonna come through.
I'm just saying, this is what I see, this is what I'm hoping for, and this is what we're trying to achieve.
So,
Absolutely.
if the outcome doesn't happen, we can look forward to another increase.
No, not
Well, then
necessarily.
where are we gonna find these funds? Where are we gonna find revenue?
We have the revenue stream now in place.
Okay, so then what you're saying is then we don't have to bank on the future of growth, Novartis, and
If the development doesn't come
Roads
through, are we
need growth.
covered?
Your
I
bills
know,
You
go
have to
up.
have growth.
but,
You
you know, okay, I
have to
understand.
have growth. If, you know, if your revenues
course.
don't come in and your healthcare and everything else rises, your
Right.
retirement funds,
We have to address those
Yeah.
issues.
Absolutely.
But should we be addressing them now?
We're addressing them
later?
all. We're addressing everything.
It seems like the school board and the town can stay under the 2% cap, why can't Suffern?
Well, that's a whole different, the 2% cap, if you calculate the 2% cap for the school board, they're paying roughly $192 per thousand. Where we're now at $87 per thousand. You know, so for their 2% increase to our 2% increase is different, and the amount, the number of people is a larger pool.
And it's a $137 million budget.
That's another.
2% increase is quite substantial.
But it used to be 7% before the 2% cap was put in. And after the 2% cap was put into place in 2011, it always stays under 2%. And also, it takes 60% of taxpayers to vote to approve it. That's 60% of a board.
Of the board, right.
And that makes a big difference. If you put this budget out to the owners of Suffern, the homeowners, I guarantee we would not be approving a 7% increase.
But
We would make you stick to a 2% cap.
Mr. Mayor, how much of the real estate tax on a percentage basis is the Suffern base?
25% of your real estate taxes go, the Village of Suffern makes up 25% of your total tax base.
And how much, and what does the school district in the town make up?
School district has to be roughly 60%.
75%.
75%?
So the village is 26%.
Oh, the school and other.
Right.
Yes, 75%.
It's almost 75%. So the village is a very small portion
And
of
you
the
get the
total
full
real estate
service,
tax.
I'm sorry for interrupting,
No, it's okay.
you're getting the full service for that 25% of your tax revenue.
This was
I understand that the taxes are high, I do. And, you know, staying under the cap is extremely challenging when you have rising costs, when you have contractual obligations, when you have retirement funds. It is
The
challenging.
cap is there for a reason, isn't it? Wasn't it put in for a reason? Because New York is in a crisis with property taxes. So we are trying, it's been going up astronomically for over 15 years. The cap is in place to put a stop on it. It's putting a cap on it, literally, because it's out of control. It's like a fire hydrant that has been burst, and you know, we're flooding here in Suffolk. The cap is there for a reason.
Anybody have any idea
There's a
what
reason why the
state
governor is
tax
going
increase
around
is?
petitioning saying the 2% cap should be permanent, because we need it. It's a state mandate. You're disregarding the state mandate. Say,
It's
well,
very
we can't
easy.
do that, we gotta spend 7%, we gotta do 14%.
It's very easy for Cuomo to mandate what Suffern should do.
We're not talking about.
When is he gonna mandate what he's
All
doing?
right, hold on, we're not getting into a governance debate here. The only thing is that I can say is what I opened up with was that we reduced this budget, we streamlined it, we
I
worked
appreciate that.
together. This is what we're trying to achieve without impacting services.
But you can't afford those services.
Do you have,
You can't.
does anyone have any recommendations on the services?
What do you wanna cut? In plain
Please,
English.
okay, can I just say
I'm not
something?
worried about street lighting.
Can we just stop calling everything free? Listen, I understand that we wanna service all of Suffern Central, and I get that we have extravagant events, we do. We have the best events that you can have. But when you do a kid zone, all Suffern Central, K through 5, only one of my children can actually attend that. But everybody gets to come because they say free beverages, free this, that's not free, we pay for that.
Right.
And I'm not saying it's a bad thing, I think it's a good thing as a community to have those
Okay,
events.
I have to just interrupt you for a minute.
No, you
because-
changed it. We changed it to now you have to pay for it. And the original,
No, it's free and it's open to Suffern residents.
now it is. Original
Cathy, is that
posting
correct?
was free to it's always been free beverages, free events.
But that's
then-
all donated, we're not paying for that.
That was after the fact. You got
No,
donations from Walgreens
no.
and stuff. Listen, let's just address the issue as it is. We do
Okay.
pay for that. Nothing's free.
Nothing's free.
Nothing's,
You're right.
let's just be
Nothing's free.
honest,
Just
let's
like
be
Mike
honest.
said,
Nothing
checking
is,
account,
when you
nothing's
hold an
free.
event,
You're right.
nothing is ever free. So even if you spend time getting the donors or that meeting with them, that's still payroll,
But
that's
the-
still time, nothing is ever free. We have to stop calling them free and maybe just charge a small fee for those great events. I think that they're great. The Kids Zone thing going in, I've been advocating for that for a long time. I think that is an amazing thing to do. But to charge a small fee per person, I would still go there and pay for my kid. Like I would go to Kids Zone or something else, a bouncy castle. I would pay $10 for my kid to go. I think that's fine. I think that we have to stop with maybe giving away so many, like at the Suffern Pool, we give away the barbecue that's free. Those hot dogs are not free. Whether it takes time to get the donors and get everything set up and do all that stuff, that still is not a big part of the budget.
I hear you, Mr. Turco, I mean, these are the events that make the village what it is. I understand what you're saying, but you know, if you're gonna talk, hot dogs and a free kid zone is not gonna make up the 5 to 7%.
I'm not saying
You
it
know,
is, I'm
but-
saying it's a step in the right direction of smaller things that we
Right.
can bite off, just to make sure that we're covering at least the cost of what we're doing in the village. And I think that they're great. No village does this stuff. And I think it's amazing. I'm saying that you can't use the word free when people come outside of the village to our area.
Right.
The village residents pay for it, but they get to enjoy it, which is fine, because we want Suffern to be that hub. But we have to stop using the word free, because it's not really.
Cathy, take that out of your vocabulary. Yes, sir.
Are we willing, okay, you're asking the voters to take a part of your budget plan, but are you willing to hear the voters say, make the cuts in your services?
Say no.
Are you willing?
Say no to something, cut something.
I mean,
You
that's,
add 1 year.
that's the
you
big,
add in
if I
future
look
years
at
when
that,
you can, and
if
when
I
you
look
can't,
at
you have to
that.
Where would you like to cut?
I'm not gonna get into this because it's very
No,
contagious. It's, we have department heads here, but just generally speaking, is the board willing to make cuts in services?
I would like to see this.
Or are you willing to accept the cut?
Yes.
No,
Do you
no,
want
no,
to-
I
You have
will,
to-
but if
Would
you're
you be
saying, you
willing
know
to
what?
go down
if-
to
if-
1 day a
if
week
I
for
was-
garbage collection?
Yeah, if we have to, we have to.
I mean.
Is that something you would be
But,
willing to accept?
The alternative is that our community collapses.
Oh, hold on,
Let
I mean,
him answer.
if we were to meet halfway down in the road, yeah, I mean, why not? I mean, you know, if it could be done, if, you know, but
And since.
if I look at that budget pie, I'm not a finance guy, I'm not Mr. Accountant. I see a big portion in services. Now, are we blind? I mean, you know, she's giving me a good stare here. Who's giving me a good stare? And I am saying,
It's on you,
it's so,
they're
it's so,
fascinated.
you know, it's like we just want to just wish the services just tuck it away in the corner there.
Well,
Just, let's not address it.
Well, yeah.
But let's go after street lighting. Let's go after these nickel and dime things. I mean, we really have, and then on another point, it's the negotiations. I'm not saying, you know, the police department, but I mean,
But then what
I
are
mean,
you
I don't want to
saying?
get into it, but those are large numbers. I mean, now you're going to me, well, you know, the response time, you know, it's a 2-minute response time, it's great, sir. And yes, it is, but the problem is that there's other issues here. You know, in this village, you know, you have taxpayers putting kids, I'm putting 2 kids, I mean, you know, I'm not gonna go through it, because I listened to your 3 meetings in the past on the video for 3 hours. You know, I'm putting kids through college, 80 grand a year. But, you know, I don't see a commitment where you wanna go after the pork and barrel stuff.
Well, we
Right
have.
into the meetings.
We have. We haven't filled positions. The police department's down 7 officers. The
But
street-
no,
let me
let's
think-
let's address the
Okay,
7.
go ahead.
When you say 7 officers, those are people on the beat. But do you see the staff that support the 7 officers?
I'm just addressing the comment that you made, that you're not addressing the meat and potatoes. We are not filling positions currently. In the last 2 years, we are operating.
Well, I
with-
hope not. Well, we're
We
still
are
seeing,
addressing
but,
it.
okay, but maybe you address it a little more. I mean, I don't think the people feel out here that you are. So for you to tell me that you are, then that's a question. You know, I'm just,
Okay.
what I perceive and what I see is one thing, okay. I hope we do succeed. You are chipping away at it. It is getting lower. People are coming to the meeting. They're bringing up issues. You are making a valid attempt to lower it down, but we would like to see it lower.
You just gotta deal with the cards that you're dealt. You know, you
Can I
get
say
you get
something?
certain cards.
Hold on,
you
and
gotta
this
deal with.
woman,
No,
the
no,
lady
no,
has her hand up, I'm sorry.
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
I've been starting to come to the board meetings, and actually I started more with the budget. I think what we need to do to move forward, like you were saying, is the first thing, like a recommendation, is maybe put a survey out to the community. I mean, I've been to all 3 meetings. We have, how many people in Suffern, you know? Look how many are here tonight. You know, I think if we put, you know, like a survey, that kind of thing, like he said, more fundraising, you know, and have the community get more involved instead of everybody bitching and taking it on the lower level instead of, like, you know, Mr. Giotino said it's the upper level and everything else going above. I think if everybody tries to get involved, I mean, you know, to say different departments, I could say they've cut over the years. I used to work for the village, you know? I mean, I'm not saying now, but hey, we have a great community center there. Open it, you know, for nighttime, but we can't do that right now. I used to do a volleyball league when I did that at night for adults. There was so much more than what's like right there now. I'm not happy, believe me, I just bought my house 2-3 years ago. You know, we lived here, we moved away because we couldn't afford it, then now we moved back. But I think if we do more fundraising, the community, you know, foundation, you know, try to look and get more grants. I mean, I can tell you one thing, I know it's part of the village of Montebello, but the other thing up by the junior high, and I know it's like Ramapo and everything, the drainage up there, I mean, alone, that's Montebello area, I know it's not the village, but it's sad, the nuns that are up there, they've paved that so many times. I take food up to those people after events, and I have to go like, you know, really quiet, you know, I'm gonna call the mayor there. You know, when you look at our village roads, I mean, they're trying to do the best they can here, you know, between, you know, O&R, the new piping and everything else. It does take money. And I think if a survey goes out, you know, just like that summer calendar everybody gets, you know, maybe do a little newsletter, you know. I mean, there were 5 people that I told to call the village. They don't even know how to get connected, because yes, the big thing is the social media now, you know. A lot of people didn't even really know about.
Excuse me, what would you want this survey to ask?
To the villager residents, or put it out from the board, you know, maybe a little excerpt, you know, what suggestions do you have, you know, doing fundraising, do everything, and get out there. And like he was saying, you know, charge a little thing, you know. I know everybody's tired of donating, whatever. Have I don't know, a dance, or I know it takes a lot of time, but let's face it, a lot of things, when it comes down to volunteering, people don't want to volunteer, they want. So I think if a thing went down, you know, we have a whole year to work on something, you know. I'm sure if Clarke did something with the teens, you know, how everybody does have the car washes or anything, do it from the village, you know, and have it go back in, you know what I mean? Something
All right.
to that
All right.
effect, you know, and see, you know, that way
All righty.
nobody
Thank you.
can really say anything.
I mean, I appreciate, Mayor Markunas, that you've really brought fiscal responsibility, that you've made us, you know, build up our surplus, that we're not in the deficit any longer. But it seems like they're like kind of conflicting messages, that you embrace this fiscal responsibility, you brought in the comptroller to oversight of the finances. But at the same time, you're not sort of willing to make ends meet, that 2% is the cap, it's what we should stick to. And you're kind of saying, no, we should really, 7% is fine, or 5% is fine. And I think that the general message from citizens of Suffern is that we want to be fiscally responsible. We don't want to take on this debt. We don't want to bite off more than we can chew. And to say, well, you know, we have all these things in the pipeline, they're coming down, and maybe, you know, I think we'll be able to afford these services. But if we can't, I think that we have to do the responsible thing, the tough thing, the hard things, to make things work. Otherwise, it's just not sustainable.
Speaking to those points, based on feedback that I've received from, I would say, hundreds of people from the community, that they do not want to see services cut. That's what I'm saying. That's all. I hear you. I hear from 2 or 3 in the audience today that they would like to see services cut.
And can you define that? What is services cut in your opinion? Exactly, like transportation, or public safety?
Whatever it is, whatever the public deems
is
recreation.
Okay.
Would you like to see the pool closed? Is that something that everybody here would like to see, the pool closed for the summer?
No.
We service over 800 people of the village of Suffern. Is it revenue generating? No, but we $15,000.
Yep.
The kids have been going there
Off the
for
street.
years and years. Your children's children
Well, as an
great
example-
grandparents go there. I mean, that's a tough decision. Do
Well,
we
that's a
close
perfect
the
example,
pool?
that one example, you're saying that we're deficient in the revenues, right?
Right.
So the pool pass is $75. So say
Right.
if it needs to be $95 for it to be sustainable and for us not to take on that deficit, those
Right.
are the kinds of responsible decisions that we have to make as a village and you have to make as a board.
And we've done that. We've done that, 2 years ago, I believe, we raised the pool fees. You know, and then how much of that burden is going to families that, you know, are struggling at the same time? It's very complex, and you have to look at everything, and we consider everything. Road paving, we spent over $400,000. I know maybe you don't see it, but over $400,000 in road paving.
Can I make suggestions with the road patching? Can we not just throw the blacktop into the hole? Can we cut it out with a demo saw and cold tack it and make sure that it stays there so the next winter it doesn't just peel up again? 'Cause
Great idea.
I feel like we,
Right.
listen,
I'm not like an asshole guy, but.
I'm just saying, I know the architectural drawings call for, you know, saw cut it out in a box,
Right.
tack it, put a
What's the
base layer.
tapping part? What is that? Tapping?
That's what binds it to the blacktop.
Okay.
So instead of pouring it into the hole, just leaving it stranded, when the plows come through, it just slowly chips away at
Right.
the blacktop,
Right.
so that eventually that pothole just becomes a bigger one.
Or at least be honest with us, like, if we can't afford the 2% gap, just tell us right now. Just say, in general, we cannot meet our revenue, we cannot meet the revenues that will pay for the services. So, 5%, 7%, 10%, whatever's going to be our average increase each year, give us a heads up, give us a 5-year plan, you know?
I think you gotta take into effect the things, I've paid attention to the planning board things you don't know, and Mr. Savarese, I think your father was mayor years ago, you Savarese?
I believe so.
What?
Yes.
Yes, his
It's
father.
the building
was-
we're sitting
No, it's
in.
good, no, it's a good thing, right, and we got Fred Rella, his father was mayor, Suffern, you know what I mean?
A lot of
So,
history there.
there's a lot of people, you know, that have been around, okay? But there are things going on, okay? There was damage done, strong damage done, and I've said this before recently, okay? You said you've seen the meeting, so you've got me saying,
Yeah, I
okay?
love it.
With Novartis,
That's
okay?
it, right there.
With Novartis, okay? And it was hundreds of thousands of dollars that it cost this village, all right? So luckily, and I'm gonna give credit to Jim, Jim works hard, and there's other people that work on the planning board and zoning board that make no money in this village, or $1,000 stipend or something, okay? And they are doing responsible building right now, okay? So there will be more money coming into the village, and they do have to work harder to save, okay? Which, every one of them is doing it their own way, and I compliment them. I like sitting next to Steve the best, all right? But there are projects, all right? Washington Avenue, okay? That Brennan will be starting to build it, okay? I actually talked to these people, okay? I've never talked to the people who are doing Novartis, but I paid attention to it, okay? They're going forth, and there's gonna be big building there that helps the village of Suffern, industrial building, okay? There's gonna be building going on, like I said, by the telephone company, 48 units, okay? I know the owner of that property also, okay? So there are things coming that are gonna be, we don't have the big tax money yet from the
Sheldon.
So there are things coming, okay? And I think this board realizes more than they ever did, that they really have to have sharp pencils, okay? And I think they will, because I'll be watching them, and there are other people watching them, you know, whoever else is around, okay?
Didn't we give a huge tax break to the Sheldon?
Okay.
Yes.
My next question.
Yeah, I'll go into that, I paid attention to that with the Sheldon, okay? What happened with the Sheldon is that it was Goldstein, all right? He also owned the Crown Plaza and many other properties, right? He was doing it based on if he could get enough, if it was profitable for him to do that building. Based on the fact that David Chen, who owned the property, I actually helped him, Goldstein, to get the property. I didn't know Goldstein. He called me out of the blue and said, Michael, I don't really know this guy, could you help me? So I did, because I see it as a good thing for Suffern, okay? He, in the meantime, had to buy the gas station next door that went for excess, because when they found out a builder was coming in. So he went to the IAD, the county. This was a county-run thing, not the Suffern thing. And they said, hey, listen, we want to do this project in your village, okay? In this county. So they said, okay, we'll give you these breaks. Now, if you look at what they're paying in taxes, it's substantially more than what we would have collected if the property stayed the same. And it's not only that,
It's the hope that you get as you drive through Suffern and you see that building now, okay? A lot of people say, look at that building, and I know it's not a cheap building, they're gonna get a good rent, okay? But hopefully then, they'll get out of their car and they'll walk through the village and into the town. That's what you're hoping for. You need more of that walking traffic, okay? I personally got involved. I got nothing out of it, no gain, no nothing. Never asked for a favor, don't want any favor. I care about Suffern, and that's why I did.
Is it transferable?
You got tax money to build that too.
Hold on,
Hold on, going back to the show.
He may have.
I just want to know though.
You know, he may have, but that's okay. It helps Suffern.
Is the building
I'm not saying it didn't help,
transferable?
I'm saying he got money too.
Mike, do you know if it was to be sold, let's say
Yes.
tomorrow to any random person that wanted to buy it?
Right.
Is the tax exemption, would it transfer over to the new buyer?
I
The
don't.
answer is
I don't know
actually
the answer to
yes,
that.
as said it at
I
that
think the
meeting.
answer would have to be if it transferred with the same corporation or not, it would be my, I don't know the answer to it. But I don't care about that, because we made a choice to say you can get this and we get this, and he gets these other stipends. There's other amounts, and maybe someone else.
Bottom line
Don't we get an
here
extra
with
amount?
the Sheldon is that we get the $40,000 host community benefit annually. They do get a reduced tax benefit, but right now with upon CO, they're at 42,000, I believe, in property taxes. With the additional 40,000, we're at $82,000 in revenue, plus sewer and water. Where beforehand, where there was no Sheldon and what we had there was the SRO, which was a dump, we were getting 36,000 collectively. So we increased it by $50,000 roughly,
So that's
plus
four
sewer and
houses
water.
on Berkshire.
Plus all the foot traffic that's gonna
So
develop.
what they
They're
got
bringing-
was, they're paying us the same equivalent to basically 4 houses
They
on
built a
York.
$25 million project in the
I
village of
understand
Suffern.
how much it costs them to build, I'm saying that. what
This
they're
is
paying.
what you have to do for economic development
I'm
and
just
to
comparing,
have.
I'm saying that it's 4
No, but
houses
the
on
comparison
Berkshire.
is not good because we would not be able to have those additional funds in place. Absolutely
Now,
not.
are the other future projects also gonna be?
No, as of
Not
now,
now.
no, as of now.
Nobody's
Let's-
getting anything.
Okay,
Two
let's,
projects
times
that
are
have
good,
passed, nobody's
times are
getting
good, let's
anything.
bargain a little harder.
There you
You know
go.
what I mean, let's throw a
There you
little,
All right.
art of the deal.
We're bringing you in.
Let's have a little cannolis, you know what I
All
mean? That's all. Let's
There's
not get
two
the, let's not
projects
get the
that
house.
have been passed, they
Yeah.
can start building tomorrow if they get their permits now.
Okay,
They got no permits.
no perks, oh, that's nice.
As you see,
'Cause I hate to be
we want-
investors with
We
millionaires.
want revenue.
We
We
want it.
need the revenue to offset the tax base.
That's right.
All right.
There is
All right,
no,
here we
there's
go.
no quick
Jim?
fix here. There's
Jim?
no quick fix.
But
It
Jim,
takes
is
time
there
to
a
get,
fix?
it
Do you
takes,
see a fix?
yeah, I see a
As living here
fix.
and you doing what you did, you were mayor.
I don't want
wanna know as
anybody to get a
resident,
heart attack. When I
Are
came
we
here,
gonna
my
be
first
All right, Jim,
taxes
Mr.
were
Turco, that's it, we gotta
$400.
carry on here with the meeting. There we go. All right, very healthy conversation we had here tonight. We're moving, oh, you have more questions? All right, go ahead. Hold on, Steve.
So, one of the things, it's actually from Mike.
This is from Mike.
There were some emails that I believe Paul initiated that discussed the benefit, cost benefit, if you will, of having the AA rating as opposed to the rating we have now in terms of what it would cost in the future to borrow if we got that AA rating versus keeping the same rating we have today. So do you have any sort of numbers on that, on the benefit?
No, I have a second email out to our municipal financial advisor to ask them currently under the rates what the difference in that rate would be, so we could determine on an average 20-year bond what that would amount, let's say on every $1 million or something. In terms of the other question, does it affect our current versus our future bonds? The issue is this. It would affect, that rating would affect any bonds we have to be issued. We would not necessarily get as good a rate, but what would happen with our other bonds is that they would be downgraded and make them less attractive in the market, which is something you really don't want to have. But
That's if
but in terms of
that's
the
if we
dollar
do get
actual,
the AA?
I'm sorry?
You're saying if we do get the AA, it would down, it would?
No, double A is up. Just so everybody that doesn't follow it, we are rated by a credit rating agency named Moody's, which does probably 80% of the local municipal governments in the United States, state and local governments. You also have Standard & Poor's and Fitch ratings, and then there's some other smaller ones. But the bottom line is, whenever you go out to issue bonds, they look at your credit rating, and they rate you, just like you have a personal credit rating, right? They rate you on, you know, what your fund balance is like, you know, what kind of revenues you bring in. A lot has to do with the demographics of the community, just what we're talking about here, the economic development. So just imagine, you want to lend money, that's what's happening. The village goes out and says, we want to borrow money. If you want to lend money to the village, what do you look at? You look at how do they manage their finances? Are they willing to make tough decisions when it has to be made? Have they run into the red? You know, have they gone into a deficit? Have they gone bankrupt, essentially? And then you look at other things. Well, what's the kind of conditions in that village? If you looked at Suffern, Suffern's got a lot of great things going for it. In addition to the building that they're talking about now, we're only about 30 miles out of New York City. That's a big plus for us. We have a lot of major highways going through. That's another big plus for us. Our per capita income and our household income, on the average, is higher than a lot of the other parts of the state. So we're doing very well on all those areas. What happened to us prior, right? In roughly 2014, we ran into such a bad deficit from years and years of bad fiscal practice that we were borrowing ahead. In other words, those water bills that are going to come out in May, we already borrowed the money for them ahead, right? So now we were behind in paying them. We had to pay off, so you're always behind the eight ball. You're borrowing ahead on that money. We were putting things in the budget like the sale of a building, that Orange Avenue building. That was up
120 Orange Avenue, I believe.
120 Orange Avenue. That was in the budget twice. It didn't sell. 2 years in a row. We had a bond anticipation note, for some reason, was appearing as a revenue. Right? So when you put all this together, lo and behold, you get into 2014, and it was probably around September, October. I came to the board and I said, you know, you don't have money to pay the vendors. You don't have money to pay the next payroll overtime. Money. I'm talking about cash. You actually ran out of money. Our fiscal year, our taxes were collected June, in the month of June predominantly, and by September, October of that year, we had run out of money. And so we had to go and get what was known as deficit financing. We had to go to the state, get special permission to get a budget note to the maximum we could borrow and a revenue deficiency note. And then we had to go and do something that's kind of rare in New York, just like the county did. We went forth and got deficit financing, special permission from the state to borrow money just to fill a hole until we could start building ourselves out of it. So what was happening? Our credit rating dropped from a AA to what's known as a Baa1, which is just above what you've heard junk status, Baa1, and we had a negative outlook. That means that we're watching you close. Moody's was watching us close. Depending on how the next 6 months went with board decisions and other things and management, that meant we're very likely going to be dropped again into junk status. However, the board made tough decisions back then, and we stuck to a very important fiscal plan. We started putting in controls, and we did so well that last year when they rated us, Moody's bumped us up. I'm sorry, we were Baa3. We went up to a Baa1, which was just below an A, and we now have also on a positive outlook. Moody's has 3 outlooks. You have negative, meaning we'll probably downgrade you. Stable, meaning everything looks okay as long as you keep it this way. And positive means you're very likely to get upgraded if you keep on this same fiscal path. So what happened to us? They not only bumped us up, and the rating agents, the analyst at Moody's, was on the phone with me, and she told me, I went to the committee and argued to try to get the A for you. She said that they said it was unusual not only to get bumped up 2 grades from Baa3 to Baa1, but on top of that, get a positive rating. She says, you guys are doing the right thing, stay with it, and try to even do better. And that's, I've got to say, I'm very proud of everybody who worked. It wasn't just the board, myself, everybody here, all the department heads. You know, they worked very hard. One thing I've got to say about all the employees, and I think you all see it, and the services that are provided, they all work hard, they all have the best interest. Many of the people live here, that's why, their families live here. Mr. Savarese, your father appointed me as the treasurer of Suffern in 1984.
I'm sure
It's a small world.
he's looking down at you.
It is, and I'm very
No, but it's,
glad I'm proud, but
my roots are here, even though I'll admit I don't live here, but I still have a house. And I hope that the board does work as a team and resolves and be responsible. And I think the taxpayers also are part of this.
absolutely.
You know what I mean? But, you know, going to the taxpayer and all that is not the answer. But I put my faith in you guys. You're elected officials. And I hope what you project and what you do in this budget is good for the people.
Thank you for your input. It was
No, it's,
a good exchange here tonight.
no, it's,
Yeah,
I've been watching.
Have you considered the impact of property taxes on home values? Like, for example, the average home value in Rockland County is $250 per square foot. The town of Ramapo, it's $254 per square foot. But in Suffern, it's $184 per square foot. So we are significantly, our homes are valued significantly less than the average home in Rockland County. And I think that maybe perhaps a reason for that is our higher property taxes, and also, and is that because of the cost of our services? Are our services too much for our revenue base? And is that what is bringing down our home values?
I don't know if that's a fair analogy. When you talk about the town of Ramapo, you have many, many large areas where homes are valued between $3
Well,
and $5 million.
Rockland County is $254.
But didn't you mention the town of Ramapo?
Yeah, which
That's
is also
254.
$254.
Right.
So we are $75 less than the county. So in the whole county, our home values are less than the rest of the county. And I want to know why that is. It's because we have our own police department, we have our own water department. Are those services creating such a
Because
burden
we're
that
only
it cannot
2
be
square
sustained
miles.
by our property taxes, which is bringing our values down, our home values down? That's a good question.
I wouldn't say necessarily that it has anything really to do with our budget, but more the type of homes that are contained within the 2 square miles. You know, you have Bon Air, you have Stonegate, 1-bedroom units, 2-bedroom units, little co-ops. You have a large percentage of homes that are valued much lower. They bring that base much farther down.
Those actually sell for higher per square foot than
Yeah,
those.
they
He's quoting
do.
in square feet, Moira.
Right,
He's
but-
not
I have a
quoting in-
2,000 square foot house.
The
And
townhouses
it's
and the
worth
condos.
$130 per square foot.
The
So don't tell me that it's the size of
Well-
your house.
Well, you
Sell
live in the
for-
Cirque, correct?
That's
And
correct.
they have their own little issue and have always had their own issue
That
of
is,
trying
that
to
is not true,
maintain
no,
their
that's not
their
true.
house
I understand that you
value.
live in Bon Air right next door, or at the Knolls next door. That's not true, actually. I've lived here for over 30 years, my family. So our values were always high, but with the increase in property taxes, our home values have just collapsed. They've gone
But I
down
see the
to
home-
$100 per square foot.
But I
And
see the
that's
home
directly-
values
that's
over
directly linked
trending
to
up.
property taxes.
I see home values trending up.
I know. In the county, yes.
No, in the village of Suffern.
Suffern, they just redid.
I probably have the documents in, I may have them in here, in my stack of paper, but I
Yeah.
did a little bit of research on that. I'm not a real estate agent, but I've seen, home values trending up.
It's true.
Year to date, probably 2% from last year, on an average, that's what I would say.
Are they listed trending up or are they selling trending up?
They're selling trending up.
I hope they stay low, so because it's based on your assessment. So keep it low, my house.
Keep it low.
When I sell.
John,
put it
didn't you
on the
just
roof.
sell your house?
No,
I thought you said you sold your house.
no, I actually turned down the offer.
Was the offer lower than what you paid for it?
Yes. But then they came back up to full. That's why I was saying the townhouses are actually selling for more than the actual homes. Because like in where we live, the taxes are cheaper.
And we have common charges.
Well, no, I understand, but it's still cheaper. So like when you do the square footage of where we live, and then you go into my old neighborhood where I'm looking now, they're up to 19,000 in taxes, where we would be around 13. Or they're still saving that extra 5, and I understand you get the lawn and things like that.
We don't
But-
have property.
No, I understand why it's lower. I'm saying that that's the reason why those values will go up. So people will move here and move into those areas because it is a lower monthly bill. So when you go to get your mortgage, you know, they're gonna say, well, how much can you afford monthly? So there's some that are going on in my old neighborhood. 7 are popping up on the market right now that I know of. And some of them are $19,000 in taxes with a $5,500 tax, Village of Suffern tax bill. So
Where is that, John?
So of the 19,000, 5,500 is the Village of
Yes,
Suffern.
I'm not saying that it's the biggest tax bill, and nobody's saying that we just have to, it's very, what I'm saying is, it's disheartening to see that somebody tries to sell their house, or they buy that investment, and they think that they're gonna retire on it, and then they list it for a price that's reasonable per square foot, but then have to drop it $70,000 just to get rid of it, to offset the taxes,
Right.
to make sure that the mortgage company and the underwriters will actually give and provide young families a loan based off of their income. That's how that works. So if you don't qualify for a $19,000 taxes, or, you know, if you can't pay that, plus the home, the price of the home, you're not gonna get your loan, you're gonna get denied.
But we understand all of that, but once again, 25% of the 19,000 is the village. The other 75% is the school district
But the
and
town is lower.
everything else.
The town is,
And
like,
the
for where we
point,
live,
listen,
is
we're
1,200.
talking about the budget, we're not going through a whole real estate course here. Understandable, what I'm looking at is that our home values are rising. I have an investment here, everybody here has an investment. This is what we're trying to protect, this is what we chose to live here. We put our kids through Suffern Central School District, which we all love, am I correct in saying that? Or do we not like the Suffern Central School District? I think we all love it. It's a great district. And this is what we're paying for. I mean, we're talking about the Village of Suffern budget.
But my parents' house that they originally bought on the same street, when they first moved in, their village tax was like $400. It's over
What year was that?
6,700 now,
What year?
1987.
Okay.
But look, it's a big,
What's
it's
the
more.
increase?
I'm just,
All right.
it's a lot of money for people to spend, and young families to try to raise their kids.
It
We
is,
have
I
to
mean, young
really look
families
at-
that wanna come here like I did, I came here, I paid high property taxes, and I put my kids through Suffern Central. I mean, it's a great community, I
It
don't
is a
know what
great
else to say.
I agree with
Um,
you. I agree with you.
I'll take this gentleman's advice, we're looking positive, we're gonna make sure that we,
Please.
you know,
That's all right, so when
come in
I watch,
under the tax
when I watch
cap.
next week, if I can't make the meeting,
There you go.
and I'm viewing it, I'm watching a hockey game, and I have you guys in the back. And my wife say, turn that crap off.
Thank
Don't
you.
put that on TV.
Too late.
One more question.
I have one comment.
Yes, Mr. Lejoy.
Because I agree with Mr. Curley totally. The village is doing a great job of bringing more revenue into the place.
Correct.
And that's what we really need. The other thing I observe in all these meetings, I hear people commenting about an increase that's gonna come out to about 50 cents a day for their houses on average. But I hear nobody talking about what services they wanna eliminate. And if people don't want this 5% tax increase, they need to eliminate services.
7.6.
Whatever it is. The point is,
Not 50 cents
is
per-
everybody willing?
Couple $100.
I think to help the board, people have to say what they're willing to give up. And so, for example, there's municipalities in the area that pay no overtime for plowing. They don't send the plows out until the snow is done. There's no salt and sand on the roads. No, I'm gonna retire someday in Suffern, I don't want a tax increase. Tell the board that's what you want. Nobody tells them that. You wanna consolidate with the town of Ramapo? Go ahead, but just remember, you're not saving 100%, you're still gonna pay quite the price, especially when you're talking about police that get paid a lot more money. So what I see is a lot of complaining, but I don't see constructive input to the board. And
you know, it's getting, it doesn't help.
So where do you
the
want to
board.
start?
Hold on, let
Do we-
Mr. Leader finish.
Can we go
This
to
is not
2 in
the
the
time and
morning?
place. Send
Yeah.
them, send them, I mean, you know.
I'll
You wanna
send
sell the water department?
What do you wanna do?
No,
I gotta-
my
I just
suggestion,
came
my,
from
Hold
work.
on, guys.
my suggestion
Insulted.
is that the board do a referendum in terms of voting for what, if that's the right way to do it, voting what services you don't want. But the point is, I hear no constructive input. Nobody wants to touch anything. So for 50 cents a day, it's down to about maybe 70 cents a day, 25% of your real estate cost. You either start going to the school board some more also,
Absolutely.
or you start giving some constructive input.
People-
Stop plowing till the snow's
People
done.
come here for the schools, that's probably the only reason why most of us are staying here.
People come here
the
for
schools, I'm gonna tell you
everything,
that.
people come here for everything, but they
I
don't
gotta
wanna,
tell you, what I would
they
say
don't
is
wanna
constructive
eliminate,
criticism,
they.
don't eliminate it. I'm
This
gonna say,
county's
Then nobody wants to-
renegotiate,
nobody-
renegotiate the police contract.
Nobody wants to eliminate, the police
Renegotiate.
gave you a 3-year loan to get this village back in shape. This village was bankrupt. You
They
didn't-
didn't-
Did you hear Mr.
We
Genito?
pay the taxes.
Did you
so
hear
we-
Mr. Genito?
I heard what he
The
said.
place was bankrupt.
I
When
know,
this
I
board-
remember
when this-
2015 when we,
Mr. Mayor took over.
I remember that.
Okay.
And I remember it
So-
was a 16%
So
tax increase that
the
we
bo-
all criticized.
The village doesn't have a government to pay off their debt like GM did. Okay, it takes a while. And look, I wanna retire.
We don't have a while.
It does. It's going to.
We don't have a while.
For 50 cents a day, I'm a lifelong village resident, I'm looking to retire here also. I don't wanna move out, I don't want higher taxes. But the point is, I don't wanna pay 50 cents a day, but it's 50 cents a day, and as I said, as Mr. Curley says, we need to get the revenue up, and we need to be fiscally
50
responsible.
cents a day?
That's what we're doing.
That's
All
what it
right,
comes
we're not gonna
to.
argue the 50 cents or 70 cents.
50,
That's-
60,
it's 60,
it's
70
less than a
cents
quarter
on
of
the
a cup of
average.
Starbucks.
But what we need to do is drive the revenue.
Create
and that's it.
Exactly. So, Mr. Genito, I got one more question.
Oh.
So now that you've got the increase down to whatever it is, plus or minus 1%, how much of that is the 3-year loan we got from the police? How much of the percent increase is that? Is that 5% now, 4%? Just to put everything in perspective for people. So we got a 7.2% increase, 8.2%?
Would anyone like a free water? I had to do it. I had to do it.
Just on our water bill?
Barely $10 in the case.
It's already
I'll pay for the water.
My tenants complain or have a water, what the hell?
I just wanna let everybody know, I brought them from home.
That's free! Free!
We sound like Bernie Sanders.
What does it come to, Mike?
We're gonna have an investigation now.
Bernie Curley.
Move out. Everybody else? Give
Yeah.
me water.
Are you Bernie Curley?
Bernie Curley.
Salute. My other suggestion is we fire Clarke Osborn and hire Andy Griffin. Oh, we have him already. Forget it.
All right, let's, Mr. Genito, I think we had one last
One
follow-up.
quick
Was that-
question, what's the total increase and how much is the 3-year retro that we owe our wonderful police department?
Okay,
So everybody
so
agrees.
our total increase right now is about $664,000 over last year. And the police budget by itself is about 400,000 of that.
Okay.
The state police retirement's another 50,000 of that. And then whatever, well, that's pretty much whatever the FICA would be on those salaries as well. So it's a significant piece of that 600 and, whatever I said, $663,000.
So it's like 4.5% of the budget.
4.5 of the 8% increase is
7.2%.
due to the 3-year catch-up that we owe the police.
Yeah, about 2/3 of the
Okay.
7.2%.
So we would have been around 4.5%, 4%.
Yeah.
Okay, so
Yeah.
putting it in perspective, the real increase after we took a loan from the police department is 4%. To help get the village back on track.
But just to throw this out there, all the
And by the
retro
way,
pay
if I
is
just
this
may,
year, not next year, not the one we're discussing.
Yeah, I understand.
1% of that increase, by the way, is the reduction in assessed valuations, predominantly because we lost a number of homes in Squires Gate. I've asked the assessor to give me the top 10 reductions that we got. I'm sure they're among the group, but there may be others as well.
So the real increase is closer to around 3% without the lost revenue that we're building back up. So, look, nobody wants higher taxes, but you have to start making, do you want salt and sand on the road? Do you want overtime to plow the roads? Do you want to wait till it stops snowing and we'll plow at the end?
And I'll go a little further than that. I mean, we're talking about $663,000. 75% of our budget is salaries and benefits. Someone mentioned, oh, it's services. It definitely is. That's what we are. We don't sell goods, we sell services. That's what we provide. And 75% of our budget is salaries and benefits. So if we're going to cut significantly from our budget, it's salaries and benefits. It means laying off people.
So we can lay off our neighbors too.
Does anybody know?
We can lay off our neighbors.
We could do that.
Well, that's what we're talking about.
But that's where you get into the reduction in services.
Decision, it's not a
Obviously,
personal
that's where you get the
I
reduction in
understand that,
services.
we lay people off, unfortunately.
live here.
Look, I've managed budgets of $500 million. I know what it's like to have to make tough decisions. But nobody wants to, all I hear people doing is skirting around what services, about services. Nobody says, yes, stop plowing.
Can you renegotiate the contract?
When it's up.
The other contract, the contract that was already done is done, it can't go back to the drawing board on that contract.
Anyway, I'm done, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry for disrupting.
One more question from Steve. It's
Steve
one
in
more.
the house. So, I know there's been some discussions in the past regarding water, water and sewer. Now, I know that there's a lot of items that essentially, where the water department borrows money from the general fund and vice versa. There's a lot of this back and forth that goes on. But is there any way to essentially assign better what is actually, should be billed against the water usage and the sewer usage versus the general fund? It's like, in other words, the things that, some of the maintenance, things like that, whatever, that end up coming out of the general fund. Like,
Well, if I can answer that question. I mean, the water fund and the sewer fund, all of the services and all of the requirements to provide those services for water and sewer come out of the water and sewer fund. In fact, there's also administrative overhead from, for instance, Superintendent of Public Works. That's added in there as well because he oversees those departments. But certainly they are built on a 100% recovery of costs. Any debt that's issued is paid back by those funds. Any capital improvements are paid by those funds. And so there's nothing that actually the general fund is supporting the water or the sewer fund on.
so basically, the sewer rents that we're getting and the water bills and so forth are actually completely 100% covering the costs of both the water and the sewer?
Yes.
Okay, that's great.
But Mike, we are in a situation where the sewer fund owes the general fund.
Yes, and there's an amount in there to pay back the general fund. Yes.
Right. So what drove that? Was that projects that we had to, was that issues with the
Well, that was issues
treatment
at
plant
the time.
that we had to?
It was at the time that the deficit was underway. The general fund was paying for a lot of what the sewer fund had to do. In other words, to get paid back by the sewer fund, normally you get that all paid back within the same month. But what was happening is there was no money to pay it back from the sewer. So when they went for the deficit financing, they wouldn't allow the receivable from the sewer. It had to be the general fund either had to say that they paid the amount and it's not going to get paid back, and then borrow and put it on the taxpayers, or leave it with the sewer fund and let the sewer fund pay it back over time. And that's how that's being done.
Thank you.
That answer.
Steve?
I'm good.
You're good.
Sorry, I asked a lot of questions. Is that a bad thing? Is that a bad
No, I
thing?
just wanted to check.
No,
before
I
you
see.
when the- you're gone. All right.
My questions do seem to generate a lot of public discourse, which I think is also a good thing.
All right, so as we move on here, amending the, I have a resolution to amend the 2018-2019 general fund budget for application of legal settlement amount to the 2018-2019 PBA retro pay. single? All right, so we're gonna increase the appropriations per police personal services, 170,000. Estimated revenues, working compensation, insurance recovery, 130,000. And decrease appropriations in the contingent account, 18,500. Appropriations general liability insurance, 18,900. And appropriations unemployment insurance, 2,600. Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I have a second? Motion by Mr. Girard, second. Ms. Hertzman, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion passes. Next, I have the resolution to adopt the changes to the tentative budget for fiscal year ending May 31, 2020. Village Board of the Village of Suffern does hereby adopt the following additional amendments to the tentative budget. General fund estimated revenues decrease real property taxes from 11,800,886 to 11,554,286. Increase parking permits from $175,000 to $185,428. Increase snow and ice aid from $0 to $19,148. General fund appropriations decrease police personal services from $4,273,771 to $4,114,102. Police contractual from $242,413 to $217,413. Police and fire retirement from $938,773 to $903,834. And Social Security from $438,194 to $426,778. Now in the sewer fund, decrease sewer rents estimated revenue from $2,489,199 to $2,484,199. And decrease personal services from $212,366 to $207,366. Do I have a motion on that?
Motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Do you have any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
All right, motion passed. Okay, so we're gonna continue reviewing and working on the budget, and it'll be finalized by Tuesday, April 30th, is that correct? Yeah. And that's the next meeting date, Tuesday, April 30th, 7 PM here at Village Hall. And we hear everybody's advice, we take your advice, we'll keep trying to whittle it down a bit.
Mayor?
Yes.
If I may, if I would ask the board to try to finalize as soon as possible all of their suggested changes. There will need some time is required, obviously, for us to input the changes, run them through the system, proof it, run the final presentation document for your adoption on April 30th. So whenever, as soon as possible, to have those suggested changes in. Thank you.
Does anyone else here have any other suggestions to changes to the budget?
Get it to 2%.
Get it 2%? How about the board? Anyone?
Get it to 2%?
Just
Get it to 2%?
one more,
And how would that happen?
Tell us how.
one more item.
We've worked very hard.
Someone mentioned,
Down the line.
you go to each department and you ask for a zero budget? Zero base balance. That was interesting.
Zero-based
That was your-
budgeting.
Yeah,
Zero
and then you
budget.
go to each and you say, okay, give me, what do you do? You give me 2% off or 5% out of your department. Is that that feasible?
Actually, a zero-based budget
Zero-based
starts at zero.
It starts at zero.
Okay.
Starts at.
Right.
And you get your department heads to say,
No?
here's your responsibility, what's it gonna cost to do your job? Okay? And they come to the management and they say, okay, $2.4 million, number out of the sky. Justify that. This is the same time you're talking to the department head. Justify it. How do you come to $2.4 million? And then you listen to his justification. If it's reasonable, next.
Right.
The next department head.
But he's mentioning you can't do it, so. you-
No, I'm not saying that, no.
You
I'm
can't.
saying typically.
We're
people
taking
don't do
everything
that.
into
No, it's
consideration,
interesting.
you know, and we spoke about the
That's the problem with
zero-based
budgets,
budgeting
they
last
don't
week.
do it.
All right.
Mike, just a question. I know we've had a lot of adjustments from the state or, you know, on, say, medical assumptions on the medical cost and on the retirement. Is there anything that we're waiting on of a possible revised number from them? Or have they kind of gone through all of them and given us?
No, they've
updated
gone through
numbers?
all of them, and I'm glad you brought that up because that was brought up earlier about why didn't we know these numbers earlier? I believe, first of all, this budget, tentative budget came out March 21 is when it went to the board on the information we had at that point. The actual change in our workers' compensation, which was significant, 11% decrease, happened just a week and a half ago when we were noted. And the Friday before that was when we were told about the health insurance being in a more favorable position than we originally anticipated. So those are two big numbers, very big numbers, and they only came in the last couple of weeks. But no, we're not waiting on anything else. The retirement, as a matter of fact, the state auditor completed their report, and one of the things they looked at was our calculation for retirement based on the retirement build and the projected amounts, and they said it was correct or reasonable. They never say correct, but it's reasonable. So basically, no, we're not waiting on anything else that I know of.
Okay.
Mike, you had said, I believe, $663,000 is the amount of the increase overall this
Yes.
year over last year.
Yeah.
Okay. So I would assume, and I'm just doing rough math in my head, something like 400,000, give or take, is the amount that would need to bring us below the 2% cap. Is that correct? Somewhere in that
That's
ballpark.
probably
Ballpark.
correct. Somewhere.
Is there any chance, and I know you've been reluctant to, talk about this, and you don't have the numbers yet, and I understand that. Is there any chance that the interest that we were talking about before might be close to that number over the course of a year?
400,000?
Over the course of a year,
No.
on $12 million or
No,
thereabouts?
no, not at all.
Okay, so it would be a much smaller number, you're saying?
Yeah, much smaller number, because, we're
Because
talking.
that 12 million would always float
It
down.
fluctuates,
It's
but it
really
starts
only
at the
like-
top, it starts high and works its
And
way
we
down
are,
as
we
you
are,
approach the end of the year.
again, we are earning
Same
interest on
fees.
our funds in the banks. The question is whether the additional interest that we went to a different route and then reducing our, as they call, compensating balance with the banks to the minimum level, and not having to pay any additional fees, whether that would really offset it that much. The interest rate environment is still not very strong. It's still not very strong. I mean, to get 1.5%, 2% on your money, even with $1 million or $10 million, is not necessarily for us. And just so everybody understands it, we're only allowed to put money in to bank CDs that are banks that do business in the state of New York. They're licensed to do business in the state of New York. They have to be commercial banks. We can't even put it into a savings bank. And we can only invest, other than that, in U.S. Treasuries, government securities. We're not allowed to go into the stock market. I mean, that's a state law. Actually, I think it's a very good one because it keeps everybody
It's
very
actually
responsible.
Protects me, but
Yeah.
banks are safe. But all I'm saying is, I would think that it is, even still, for the first 6 months of the year, 4 months of the year, when the balance is, in theory, pretty high. I mean, don't forget, there's also a fund balance that I think we've discussed is over $1 million, 1.2 million, something like that. Whatever it is, plus the money that would be collected in June for taxes.
Well, here's why I say I don't think it'll ever hit, it would hit 400,000. I believe that the average interest rate out there on $10 million that you could probably get is about 2%.
Okay.
for the way we have to invest it. They take 2% of $10 million, that comes out to $200,000, that's a year.
Okay, yeah.
So that's why I don't really think it would even get close to that, and of
It's
course.
probably half that balance, because you start out at 10, 11, 12 million, but you end the year.
But again, if
Well,
you put- if you
millions,
take
the
all your money
average.
and put it into an investment, let's say that alternative investment does pay 2%, and you put it in there, you're taking it out of the bank, now the bank is going to
Yeah, charge.
look at what they were giving you, and maybe they were, that's equivalent to 1%, and you're,
Yeah,
you
that
might do better, we will do
Yeah,
that
that's something we
research.
need to find out.
But it's something, it's not zero. It's not-
Years ago, in a higher interest rate environment, I would say, by all means, there's more opportunities, but today's interest rate environment, I don't see that.
Mike, it would seem like, are we in a position to pay the pensions in August and get the premium?
Oh, we pay, you're talking about the bill that comes in? Yeah, the pension bill, when it comes in, it is due February 1. You get a discount for paying in December.
Oh, I thought it was August.
In December, and the last 3 years, we've been paying it in December. That's one thing. Matter of fact, we talked about how bad we were. One of the bills we didn't pay, $1.5 million, was the retirement bill. And you would have thought that I was, out there on the corner with some guy coming up to me in a dark suit saying, "Where's my money?" Because the state was calling, saying, "Can't you give us something?" Literally, the gentleman from the state was saying, "Can't you give me like $25,000, $50,000? I said, "I can't give you anything. We don't have the money." And we actually had to pay interest, and that's why in that budget, there was part of that 16% was paying off the interest as well as the loan. But now,
I'm good with taking advantage
we
of
went
that.
just the other way, and yes, we are taking advantage. One other thing that we had mentioned is, we still have loans outstanding. One of the things that was done by the village back in 2013 or 14, I forget what, 2012, 2 or 3 years in a row, the state allowed the village to pay some of its retirement bill and finance the rest over 10 years. The interest rate's between 5 and 8%. And we're still paying that off. And when we talked about fund balance and having extra money, that would be probably the very first
you
thing I'd
go
want
after.
to pay off.
5%.
Not only would it save us money going forward, but as well, that would be a really great sign to somebody rating us, looking at it, what we did to pay off that.
Absolutely.
That paints a picture for you for what went on. Just think about it. And now the strides that we made over the course of the last 3 years, 4 years, is phenomenal. And that's what we continue to do. Some hurdles we have to jump a little higher, but we're working on it.
Don't trust about that. That can't be right.
I'm sure it can be right.
What can?
I was just showing you where the
Okay.
recycled
Right.
revenue is, I found it.
So this one shows a $21,000 previous. and
That's a
then
budget, no, that's a
zero.
budget. It's a budget of 21 and 0 for actual.
You gotta look at actual.
So how could actual be zero though? I'm just saying,
That's
it's
probably
the
the year
recyclables
there
have
was a
gone.
The
problem.
recycling business has really dried up significantly because
What page is that?
page 9 shows the sale of recyclables. It's your-
So is that a separate entry then? Because I found that other entry.
There was that other one, yeah,
Yeah,
where
the
was that?
3,000. It's a different one.
It was one year they anticipated getting 21,000 in for recyclables on actually a settlement, but it didn't happen.
That's when they went after the corner, right?
All right. Any further?
Just one thing, I'm always one thing, Frank. We've come a long way in 3 years. I'm not patting us on the back, that's what you want us to do. So just remember that. Don't kill the messenger. We came a long way. If we were where we were and didn't have the present board, you guys would burn this building down.
Easy now.
You wouldn't be at no 2%. All the 2% over the years kept everything pushing it off, pushing it off. We're at because we work very hard. And we're gonna get better. But you gotta support us there. We're helping you, you can help us.
I'm gonna help you, Frank.
Have a free water.
Down the water.
Right.
Hey, make sure it
All right,
takes it
so-
on.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I just have a question. Are you guys gonna stand?
Hold on.
Are you guys gonna stand firm with the 2%? That you guys put on social media? Are we staying at 2%? Did you guys vote to break the cap yet?
Not voted.
And then now if you have it,
We're still
are you guys gonna hold the 2% line?
We're trying. We're looking for ideas.
Because I hope that when November comes, we have a lot of fiscal responsibility, like pamphlets getting all dropped off in our mailboxes. And even at 7-point-some%, I hope nobody runs on that slate.
What do you want to cut, John?
Jim,
You gotta give
am I
them
an elected?
advice.
Jim, I'm not gonna argue with you, I'm gonna talk to the board. We elect fiscal responsible people to make those decisions so that we can afford to live here.
If this board didn't reflect fiscal responsibility over the course of the last couple of months and the course of the last 3 to 4 years, there has something to be said, because we've been fiscally responsible.
Well, we can't let it happen again, so we are here to prevent this, and the way the system works is
Correct.
right here,
And we take
it's
all
exchange,
of the
that's all.
comment and the exchange.
Because it was a disaster.
Right.
I mean, that is really sad, someone was sleeping. I mean, when I'm hearing all this and all.
Absolutely. When
It's
you,
horrible.
when you take into consideration what we've
And you know
been
what the sad
through.
thing is? Some of you guys were here, you know? I'm just saying, it's not like, who was minding the store? So that's nothing here, but that's good. You guys going in the right direction, progress is being made.
Yeah, I mean,
God
John,
bless.
we're still working on it. I mean,
Yeah.
when we had that first meeting a couple of weeks ago, we were at a $1.4 million increase over the previous year, in terms of, tax increase. It's come down since then over 700,000, so more than half, we've been able to cut it. We've got a little bit more time. Mike says not much. We're still trying to work on it.
And hopefully
But-
we'll have more additional amendments next Tuesday.
To the points that were brought up before, we've got about $450,000 of increase in police costs that we're running up against, and we have to find it elsewhere because we can't renegotiate the contract. It's what the mayor negotiated, is what we have. So we have to find other places to offset that. And we're trying our best to look at all the other places to offset that. And some of that has been, Clarke on his own has come up with some of those things as well. But basically, all the department heads and all of us scrubbing it and challenging the numbers and getting, revised estimates from the state, it's all collectively helped. If you got other suggestions, please bring them forward. Call the village, email us. If you do want to think about that question about what services you want to cut, bring them up, but we're short on time now. I would love to get us to the 2%.
I think that's kind of your guys' job, though. If the residents are screaming, bring us to 2%, we shouldn't have to sit here and tell you what we want cut.
There's residents that don't
we
want
can't
the
rely on the
services cut.
perspective.
I don't want any services cut, I'm saying
Okay,
it's
but John,
balance at 2%
John,
of the
it
state levy
needs a
cut.
full adjustment in the base, if you look at it. And that's where the village residents either have to get the gumption to say, don't plow, I'm using it as an example, don't plow and you can save overtime.
Shut the
Okay.
water off.
So the point is,
Turn the sewer plant on.
there's residents that don't want to cut services.
Don't plow.
So the residents that
I
want to
don't
cut
think anybody
service,
wants to say don't plow.
okay, so
I think you're
then you have to
construction.
get more
Shut the
out.
electric off.
You either have to create another $1 zillion in revenue by interest, or as Mr. Curley said, or you have to cut services.
I think we need to
Everybody-
drive revenue. That's
That's
the key
it.
here. We need to drive revenue. We need to encourage economic development. We need to get out of 1980s, and that's what we're doing. We're moving forward. Going to the police contract.
That's
A meager 2.25% for the first year. Mr. Alpert, is that reasonable?
I'd say 2.25 is reasonable.
It's reasonable.
I'm not so happy with 3% in the
Right.
5th year, but
It's
whatever.
reasonable. 2.5% on an increase is reasonable. That's my point. We have to pay for the services, we have to drive the revenue, and that's what we're gonna continue to do. Everybody that I spoke to, except for a few, don't wanna cut services. These are the points These are the tough decisions, as you said. These are the tough decisions that have to be made. And the board collectively will make them with your input. And I thank you once again for coming out and challenging the board. It's great. So I had the motion to adjourn.
I made the motion.
And seconded.
Steve seconded.
All in favor? Aye. I'm here for public comment after the meeting. If anybody would
We're
like
out
to
of
make-
free water.
No more water.
I can't.